Post-Apocalyptic black technology battleship system. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. There seems to be something in the sky. Xia Deming didn't want to die. This is the simplest appeal of mankind. But right now, he and the nearly 1,000 survivors here are on the verge of death. He realized that the success of the defense was in vain. Without rescue and help, there was no possibility of survival for these people here. In just a few hours, the number of zombies that had gathered was beyond imagination. He stood on the top of a high-rise building in the night and looked around. What he saw was an endless wave of terrifying zombies on the street. In some corners, zombies had already. The mountain of corpses that was about to pile up to a height of 7 stories was about to climb over the building, blocking them and kill them. Although Yuanping City has the word city, its area is actually not large. It is not even a third-tier city, nor is it very developed. Except for a few scattered high-rise buildings in the new development zone, most of them are short buildings with 7 or 8 floors. The commercial building where they were located was almost entirely surrounded by such buildings. Many people gathered in the 37th floor building, waiting for the zombies to come in. Here, they could at least die slower, while some frustrated people just stayed down below, not wanting to go anymore. After struggling, even some radical ones, they have chosen to commit suicide and never want to die at the mouth of zombies. It was also bleak on the roof of the building, and Xia Deming heard cries. Xia Deming felt very aggrieved and cold. He didn't even see the shadow of intelligent zombies, but now he was stuck here alive, waiting for death to come. Just now, he fired the last flare of the signal gun in his hand. Watching the flare rising into the sky and then dimming, his heart dropped to the bottom and he fell to the ground. Xia glanced at him, gritted his teeth and whispered, "Old Xia, how about we do something cruel to them, gather other survivors together, and use them as human shields, to create opportunities for us?" Xia Deming glanced at her, but shook his head and said, "That's not possible. Have you seen it? There are zombies in all directions. Even if we do that, there is no way to escape. It's my problem. I'm greedy. If we leave early, maybe we don't have to wait here to die." He turned to look at the brothers behind him who had followed him all the way from Bingcheng. When they were in Bingcheng, there were more than 30 of them, but now there are only 7 or 8 left, but they all support each other and support each other. A true companion along the way. In such an apocalyptic world, there is always someone to help. Xia looked down at the dense wave of corpses in the dark night in the distance. The guard put his arm on Xia Deming's shoulder. He was about to say something, but was interrupted by a sudden chaos. Chaos came from below. The already precarious car wall was blown open, but it was not the intelligent zombies that exploded the car wall, but the living people who were also trapped here. The barrier was destroyed, and the zombies outside rushed in like a flood. Xia changed her color and said, "Who did this? Are you crazy?" However, Xia Deming found the culprit who let the zombies in. He is an awakened person and has better eyesight. That was Xia Desheng, also an awakened person. Xia Deming thought of the reason why the other party did this almost instantly. They just want to survive, so they put zombies in to mess up the situation and create opportunities for themselves to escape. This is understandable. No one wants to die, and people can do anything to survive. But in Xia Deming's view, this was just a desperate struggle. He could see it all clearly from the top of the tall building. The zombies are like a black torrent, attacking the survivors here. What Xia Desheng did was nothing more than a desperate struggle. But this caused greater chaos among the survivors, and some people even collapsed. On the rooftop of the high-rise building, a madman even set himself on fire. Xia Deming shot him directly and kicked him off the rooftop. Xia Deming is not a big shot, but he feels that even if he is waiting to die, he should still look like a person. Otherwise, what is the difference between them and the zombies below? Might as well become a zombie. But at this moment, Xia grabbed Xia Deming's hand and said, "Old Xia, let's go. You are an awakened person, stronger than us, and you are not afraid of being infected. Maybe there is a chance to take advantage of the chaos. We help you." Xia Deming was stunned for a moment. He turned around and looked at Tsukao and his companions, the survivors who gathered around him, and Genpei City had already gone their separate ways. But only these people, at this moment, still stayed by his side. Kyo Deming smiled, reached out and rubbed Tsukao head, and said, "I ran away. What's the point?" He lit a cigarette and looked into the sky with squinted eyes. Tsukao was a little anxious. She said, "Is this the time to live and die together? Didn't you educate me before? Friends who are poor and not dead, don't be stupid in the end of the world. Life is the most important." It could be seen that Tsukao really hoped that Kyo Deming could take advantage of the opportunity created by Xiao Deshan to run out. However, she soon noticed that Kyo Deming didn't seem to be listening to her at all. Tsukao stretched out her hand and waved it randomly in front of Kyo Deming's eyes. "Did you hear what I was saying? When all the zombies come in and block the building, we will have no chance." However, Kyo Deming opened Tsukao hand in a very puzzled manner and stared at the sky in the distance. "Don't block it. Don't block it. There seems to be something in the sky." Kyo didn't believe it. She pulled Kyo Deming and pulled him back desperately. However, the look on Kyo Deming's face became more and more excited, and the Chinese stick he just lit fell to the ground. "Stop pulling me. Look. Look." He pulled Tsukao and made the woman turn her head. "Ah, you crazy?" Tsukao muttered and turned her head to take a look. However, even at this glance, she was stunned. Because in the sky, illuminated by the fire, a dark spaceship with a length of more than 20 meters was coming coldly through the sky, and the lights it turned on glowed brightly in the endless cold dark night. This kind of thing is obviously a human. At this moment, not only Tsukao and the others saw the battleship coming through the sky, but also many people on the building saw it and exclaimed. With the exclaim, more people noticed this. Seeing the situation at hand, everyone rushed towards the battleship. Despair turned into hope and ecstasy. They stretched out their arms to the sky, hoping to be taken away by the battleship and away from this desperate place. Chapter 152 Panic Kyo Deming. Chapter 153 Panic Kyo Deming. Suddenly, the top of the building was crowded with people, and there was chaos. Some people were even squeezed from the top of the tall building alive. The battleship opened fire in an instant, and one shot fell into the tide of zombies. The dense zombies below were blown to pieces on the ground. The awakened person Xiao Deshan, who was driving around in a car, after being released into the zombie wave, stuck his head out of the car, looked at the sky across the sky, waved his arms, and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop running out. Go upstairs. Go upstairs. Everyone, go upstairs." At the same moment, Xia Bai was a little surprised when he saw such a scene in the battleship. It didn't take long for him to go from confirming the situation here through the drone to driving a battleship to kill him, but the situation here deteriorated faster than he imagined. The bottom of the 37-story building was almost swallowed up by the tide of corpses, while on the top of the building, dense crowds were rushing towards the battleship like crazy. From despair to hope, their psychology was like a roller coaster. The same sudden change, now bursting out, is even closer to madness. When Xia Bai's battleship came closer, 3 prompts unexpectedly popped up on the battleship. Electromagnetic signal interference detected. The battleship communication system is affected and is being automatically adjusted. Looking for the source of interference. Waiting. Yuanping City is just an ordinary city. Where does the signal interference come from? Intelligent zombies. This is also impossible. Intelligent zombies should not be able to interfere with the signal interference of battleships. However, now is not the time to study this. Every minute he delays, dozens of people will die. He left it to Alpha to find the source of interference and figure out the cause. This kind of interference would have a considerable impact on civilian equipment, but it would not have much effect on warships. After all, previous drones could even send back images. However, perhaps it is precisely because of the interference here that the images returned by the drone were intermittent and blurry. Xia Bai's battleship hovered directly on the top of the rooftop. Under his battleship was a semi-scraped bus obtained from the roadside. Although it could not be driven, it was used as a transport cabin at this time. To transport these, it is not difficult to transport the survivors from here point with level 4 power. It is not a problem to hang such a bus or even a large number of survivors at the same time. Xia Bai sent a message to the audience below through the battleship point. He lowered the height of the battleship and asked the survivors to cling to the bus. He had calculated with the help of Alpha before. If the bus could be filled, it could carry at least nearly 100 people at a time, and the battleship could also hold another one. Two of them. If he moved back and forth quickly, he could move all the people on the roof away before the zombies engulfed the building point. When Xia Bai finished speaking, the survivors below confirmed that Xia Bai was really here to rescue them, and they all became crazy and excited. They rushed here like crazy, desperately trying to board the bus for transportation cabin point. Those who could squeeze into the carriage were naturally happy, but those who couldn't squeezed in directly clung to the outside of the dry carriage, regardless of the risks in the face of survival. Everyone unleashes their amazing potential point. Kyle Deming was also running among the crowd point. He never expected that there would be a sudden turn of events. He was an awakened person and had a large number of weapons in his hands. He had a great advantage in the crowded crowd. He squeezed the crowd forward and ran desperately towards the hanging rope point. However, he didn't run far when suddenly a ray of light descended from the sky and directly enveloped him. Kyle Deming was shocked, and then he noticed that his body seemed to be pulled by some force to levitate and actually flew into the sky. Kyle Deming was frightened and struggled hard on the spot. He was an awakened person, and he actually managed to get out. He was pulled up to a height of about 3 or 4 meters before he fell down point, but what he didn't expect was that as soon as he struggled out, the light would catch up with him like a tarsal maggot, grab his body again, and pull his body upward. Kyle Deming was even more shocked and wanted to continue struggling, so he heard the battleship broadcast from above, "Be honest, don't move, I'm pulling you up." Regarding Kyle Deming, Xia Bai was really speechless. The person who discovered Kyle Deming was actually Li Jingyang. This guy had discovered Kyle Deming in the picture returned by the drone before. Everyone actually had an impression of this old friend, so now Xia Bai planned to use the tractor beam tower directly pulled Kyle Deming up first, but he didn't expect that Kyle Deming didn't understand what was going on at all. The power of Xia Bai's tractor beam tower was not high. Towing such a big living person was already the maximum output. This guy here is still an awakened person, and he can really struggle out once he struggles. In fact, Xia Bai and Kyle Deming can only be regarded as acquaintances. When they were at the home furnishing supermarket in Bingcheng, a conflict almost broke out. But in Xia Bai's opinion, this is a smart man, and they also know each other after all. Pull him up first, so that he can understand the situation here. With Xia Bai's words, Kyle Deming finally calmed down and stopped moving, and was pulled up to the sky by Xia Bai. When Kyle Deming boarded the battleship, he was really surprised. He originally thought that the battleship coming fiercely through the sky should be a military spaceship, but when he got on the battleship, he realized that this was actually his acquaintance. Kyle Deming couldn't close his mouth. He looked at the battleship and Bai Lan, who was approaching from the front. He was so shocked that he could not speak incoherently. This is Bai. Lan said directly, "Now is not the time to reminisce about the past. As you can see, this is our battleship. We saw the signal flares you launched and came to provide military assistance. Now I need you to tell everything you know. Let's take timely response measures." Kyle Deming was slightly stunned when he looked at Bai Lan in front of him. He still remembered that the last time he saw this group of people, the other party was sitting in a shabby business car, and his strength was comparable to his own. But in the blink of an eye, I was still rolling in the mud, and someone else was already driving a battleship to the sky. Why is there such a big gap between this person and other people? He couldn't help wiping off a cold sweat. What he was thinking at the moment was, thanks to the incident at the home store, he didn't get involved with these people. If there was a feud back then, wouldn't it be true now? Is there no way to go from heaven to earth? Xia Bai left the rest of the matter to Bai Lan while he was piloting the battleship, using the towing tower to tow the survivors to the full load. Then he turned the battleship directly, shouted hurry up using the battleship's light wave system, and then turned the battleship directly, flying away into the distance. Chapter 153 Nonsense. Xia Bai's battleship passed through the night sky, and behind the battleship, there was a bus transport cabin with people hanging inside and outside. It passed over the heads of the densely packed zombies below, and flew dangerously into the distance. Plunder. The bus below seemed to be like an Indian train at this moment, completely full, and with the slightest movement of people, it would shake violently like a volcano. Xia Bai didn't dare to drive too fast, nor did he drive too slowly. He ensured that there would be at least one round trip within 5 minutes. However, despite this, such a flying speed is still too fast for many people. Along the way, many survivors fell from the sky due to being unable to catch or bumpy, but there is no way things it would take longer to drive people back. He wanted to send these people to a safe place they found outside the city, where Yi Hanyu, Huang Qiulan and others had been waiting for a long time. They also have their own tasks. Yi Hanyu, Dong Jianguo and others must ensure that these survivors will not cause any trouble, while Huang Qiulan's role is to comfort and reintegrate them. Huang Qiulan is very motivated for this. In her opinion, this is the first real task she has faced after joining the Xia Bai group, and it is extremely difficult. She must use this to express herself. After putting down this group of people, Xia Bai turned back sharply in midair. Without the need to carry people, he could move forward at full speed and directly break the speed of sound. Amidst the sound of sonic boom, under the shocked eyes of the survivors below, it went through the air in an instant. Yi Hanyu below looked at this scene and couldn't help but murmured, "Battleships and Zonkang are men's passionate dreams. I will definitely try them out if I have the chance." Chen Ying being on the side glanced at him and said, "Where is this? What does a man's dream have to do with you?" At the same moment, Xia Bai was sweeping the sky with his battleship and returning to the urban area of Yuanping City. At this moment, the survivor base seemed to be in danger. Under the 37th floor business building, the dense zombies completely overwhelmed it. It broke the original defensive line and spread in like a vast ocean, densely surrounding the building. The zombies in front had even begun to charge into the building. Xia Bai didn't waste any time and directly started to turn back and forth in midair to rescue a large number of survivors trapped on the roof. Bailan also received relevant information from Kyo Deming. She came directly to Xia Bai, and while looking at the zombies and crumbling buildings in the distance through the cab, she said, Kyo Deming said that the reason why they were surrounded and killed here so quickly was because they were in the city. A group of intelligent zombies were found in the house. He didn't know how many intelligent zombies there were and where they were. They were discovered by an awakened man named Zhao Desheng, but the reason why they were attacked by intelligent zombies was because this matter, Xia Bai was controlling the battleship to stabilize in the sky. Hearing this, he frowned and said, "You mean they discovered intelligent zombies and then the intelligent zombies attacked them?" "That's right," Bailan said. "Smart zombies should have existed for a long time, and they may have even discovered the existence of Kyo Deming's group of survivors, but they only started attacking the survivors after they were discovered." Xia Bai and Bailan looked at each other and felt something was a little strange. Xia Bai asked, "Where is that Zhao Desheng?" Bailan shook his head. According to Kyo Deming, Zhao Desheng put the zombies in to create chaos and escape. He was not on the roof of this building at the time. It is more likely that he is dead now, releasing zombies to create chaos. Xia Bai glanced at the ocean-like tide of zombies below. No wonder this guy can mess with intelligent zombies. He is also a talent. Bailan didn't answer Xia Bai's question, but turned directly to the back. Xia Bai took a deep breath and sent an inquiry directly through the battleship's broadcast system, looking for Zhao Desheng. Zhao Desheng hadn't found it yet, but Alpha gave information at this time. "Dear Captain, the electromagnetic interference signal source located in the urban area of Yuanping City has been located. The location has been marked for you on your interface. The location of the electromagnetic interference signal source is moving. Judging from the current thermal radar scanning results, there is no living person in the area. There are no living people, but there may be live zombies." Xia Bai took a glance and found that the location was probably in the northwest of the city, exactly opposite to where they were now. Moreover, that electromagnetic interference signal source is still moving. Xia Bai looked a little suspicious, but at this moment he couldn't leave. The group of survivors below had been overwhelmed by zombies like ants on a hot pot. If Xia Bai left, the zombies below would swarm up and separate. These survivors can be swallowed up here in minutes in Xia Bai's eyes. These survivors, who now look very embarrassed, are all the future labor force of his survivor base. At this time, Xia Bai noticed that in the crowd of survivors below, Xiao Desheng, whom he was looking for before, jumped out, jumped left and right in the crowd, and shouted loudly towards the battleship, although Xia Bai could not hear it at all due to the chaos. What exactly was he shouting? But he could guess very well. It must be, "I'm here. I'm Xiao Desheng." Xia Bai thought for a moment, and first let Li Jingyang's Black Hawk 13 fly over to check the situation. Then he manually operated the towing tower to send out a beam of light, and first brought the thing up. This time, he didn't let Bailan either. He came to greet this guy, but let him go all the way to the cab point. Xiao Desheng was ecstatic when he boarded the battleship. He came all the way to the cab, and was even more shocked when he saw the 360-degree holographic projection in the cab. The first thing he said when he came up was, "Brother, do you want to accept a younger brother?" Xia Bai glanced at him and said, "Take it, but I want to ask you a few questions first." Xiao Desheng's eyes lit up slightly, and he rubbed his hands and said, "Brother, if you ask, I will definitely answer you to your satisfaction. I want to hear the accurate truth." Xia Bai twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "I heard someone said that you found intelligent zombies in the northwest of Yuanping City. What is the situation there, and how many intelligent zombies are there?" Xiao Desheng was slightly startled, as if he didn't expect Xia Bai to ask such a question. He thought for a moment and then said, "What's the situation?" "Over there, a group of zombies live together, and there are people like guards. Alive there are probably hundreds of humanoids, rocket launchers, tanks and armored vehicles. They are so fierce, the entire northwest city is under their control. Otherwise we would have been killed by them." The first half of what this person said was okay, but the rest of what he said was a complete mess, as false as he wanted. Chapter 154 Kick him down. Xia Bai glanced at this guy and said, "Are you sure? I'm going to kill him in a moment. Your information is not accurate, and there may be a big problem." Xiao Desheng was slightly startled and hesitated. "I'm sure, not so sure, this, that, by." This time, Xia Bai was basically certain that any further discussion with Xiao Desheng in front of him would be a complete waste of time. He said directly, "Have you been there?" In Xia Bai's opinion, this guy was simply lying and glib. Xiao Desheng was slightly speechless. After a moment, he said, "My younger brother has been there, but I haven't been there. I only heard what he said." Xia Bai said, "What about your little brother? Died?" Xiao Desheng read a sentence and realized that what he said was not a good idea, so he said, "I'm an awakened person, and I'm willing to take the lead in dealing with intelligent zombies." Xia Bai twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "I heard that you opened the car formation wall." Xiao Desheng was slightly startled when he heard this and said, "Who did you listen to? Is it that guy Kao Deming? This is a pure frame up. When the zombies came, the grandson hid directly on the rooftop, and I was the only one who diligently took him with him. People are intercepting zombies below. They were almost killed by zombies before, but now they managed to escape to the top." Xia Bai glanced at this guy, nodded, and said, "Okay, I understand. That's really hard work for you. You can go back and rest." Xiao Desheng said in surprise, "Then you are taking me in?" Xia Bai was turning back now, and nodded when he heard this. "Yeah, do your best. I won't treat you badly. You go to the back first. I'm still busy here." Xiao Desheng was overjoyed and jumped to the back point. Xia Bai waited for this guy to leave the cab, then contacted Bailan through the internal channel, and said directly, "Kick that guy Xiao Desheng off my battleship." In fact, Xiao Desheng's original intention of releasing zombies into the survivor base is understandable. It was just for survival. However, this guy's too stupid, glib and talks nonsense. It is understandable, but Xia Bai does not want to have such a number one figure on his side. If it exists, it is simply a cancer at the back. Bailan, who was sitting in his seat, turned his head immediately after receiving Xia Bai's message, and glanced directly at Xiao Desheng, who was sitting opposite him. His face was as iceberg as ever, but even more beautiful. Xiao Desheng was looking at Bailan and drooling. Unexpectedly, Balan turned to him. He couldn't help but sit up straight and said, "Beauty, I'm the awakened one, you." At this moment, Balan tightened the iron rod in his hand. Everyone around him was looking at the guy who dared to tease Balan with pity. And soon, Xia Bai in front heard a scream that gradually faded away from behind. Immediately afterwards, he redirected the battleship's hull, accelerated in midair, and returned to the direction of Genpei City. Repeatedly. By the time Xia Bai turned back for the last time, the zombies had already reached the rooftop of the building. Black tide surged out, densely packed towards the last group of survivors on the rooftop. Before the battleship even arrived, the survivors over there were already rushing over like crazy. Some even jumped directly from the roof of the building and pounced on Xia Bai's battleship. As the saying goes, if there is a dog chasing you, you can run fast, and there are zombies behind you. These survivors risked their lives and pounced on Xia Bai, the last life-saving straw, and did all kinds of difficult things that even Olympic gymnasts would find difficult to achieve. Action. Just aboard Xia Bai's battleship. At the same time, Xia Bai's tractor beam was also swarming among the survivors. He was the first to rescue the survivors who were closest to the zombies. There was a woman with a child who seemed to have sprained her foot and was running with a limp. Seeing that she could no longer outrun the zombies, she pushed the child she was holding and made the other person run forward. However, the child was only 7 or 8 years old and did not understand the reason and significance of his mother's push at this moment. He left his mother's side, struggled and ran back, and threw himself at his mother. The woman with a sprained leg hugged her child. She was moved and anxious. Her face was full of tears. She couldn't persuade her child. She had planned not to run away, but she even tried to run forward again, pulling her child, trying hard to keep her baby alive. However, when she looked back again and again, she only saw the tide of corpses getting closer and closer, and the bus transport cabin where the battleship dropped in the distance was out of reach. Hope is close at hand, but despair is like a raging wave that will swallow her up at the last moment of her primary hope. The woman fell to the ground, desperately pushing her child forward, shouting something in her mouth. She no longer wanted to live. However, at this moment, a ray of light fell directly from the sky, covering her and her child's figure, pulling her body upwards. It was Xia Bai who discovered them and directly used the traction tower to pull them up from the ground. The woman hugged her child tightly. The moment she boarded the battleship, she felt as if she had returned from hell to heaven. When she saw Balan coming up to her, she even knelt down in excitement to show her gratitude. Balan was also touched. In the apocalypse, there may be some sneaky and evil people, as well as those who are self-reliant and ambitious, but most of them are truly ordinary survivors. Their pursuit in the apocalypse is very simple, it's just alive, and there are no other thoughts or ideas. As long as there is something to eat and a stable environment, you can live a good life in a down-to-earth manner, and there will be no other thoughts or ideas. Such people will actually account for the vast majority in the last days. They are like this before the end of the world, and they will be like this after the end of the world. People can say that they are ordinary people, but in this world, who can say that they are not ordinary people? In such an era, it is difficult for ordinary people to survive. How can everyone become a careerist? At this moment, Xia Bai's battleship was fully loaded with the last batch of survivors. He slowly raised the battleship, and with the hum of the anti-gravity engine, he turned the battleship around and flew into the distance. Behind them, the zombies crowded into the whole building were not reconciled. They were still charging in the direction of the battleship, but they had no wings and could not fly. Blindly rushing forward could only make them look like he fell from the tall building like a dumpling and smashed into the tide of corpses below. Chapter 155 Clearance and Killing. Chapter 156 Clearance and Killing. After transporting the last group of survivors, Xia Bai immediately returned from the sky, first returning to the survivor base in Yuanping City. The density of zombies here is extremely high and the number is huge. For Xia Bai, it is like a treasure house of energy points. On the other side, Li Jingjiang, who controlled the Black Hawk 13, also sent back the news that the intelligent zombies were indeed in the northwest city and were trying to transport something out of the city. However, the closer they got, the more serious the electromagnetic interference became. Black Hawk the 13th of May even run the risk of losing control, and the images returned are not very clear. Moreover, if the height of Black Hawk 13 is lowered, it may be attacked by intelligent zombies, but Xia Bai realized that he might have guessed correctly. Intelligent zombies are secretly hiding something in Genpei City. Because of this, intelligent zombies that never let go of a living person will avoid people because they are worried that the thing they hide will be discovered by humans. This group of intelligent zombies is obviously very cautious. They will not even take the initiative to cause trouble when they are not discovered by humans, as if they are afraid that something will go wrong in the fight. Only after they are discovered, they will take action to solve the problem and possible potential problems threaten point. And when Xiao people accidentally discovered them, they moved extremely quickly. After confirming that they were just ordinary survivors, they took action overnight and surrounded Xiao survivor base with a tide of corpses. The presence of zombies is enough to ensure that after one night, not a single living person will be left in this survivor base. And with that kind of electromagnetic interference, it will be difficult for Xiao and others to call for help or send signals to the outside world through the civilian equipment they own. Send it out point. And because of the long-term existence of the survivor base here, the large number of zombies that have gathered has given this group of intelligent zombies a huge innate advantage point. Moreover, the location of this area is relatively remote. If Xia Bai did not want to study new functions of warships, he would not come in this direction. As for the military is very busy now, and it is impossible to come to this kind of useless place where meaning comes from point. Therefore, if the plan of these intelligent zombies is followed, this group of intelligent zombies can successfully wipe out the survivors here overnight point. But unfortunately, Xia Bai is here point. Xia Bai wanted to see what these intelligent zombies were hiding and what they were that had such strong electromagnetic interference point. But at this moment, Xia Bai was not in a hurry to solve this problem. He wanted to bomb the zombie swarm here first point. In Xia Bai's view, unless the group of intelligent zombies also have fighters, they have almost no ability to escape from Xia Bai's nose when Alpha has locked on the source of interference. Moreover, the electromagnetic interference of that thing is so strong, even if you want to hide it in place, you can't hide it at all point. However, Xia Bai did not have the force to carry out a large-scale bombing point. His battleship had just been upgraded, and it took him only half a day to produce 2 380mm caliber artillery shells, 3 macro missiles, and many 25mm caliber bullets. But at this moment, the zombies here are too dense. Viewed from the sky, they are like ants stacked one after another, especially in that commercial building. The zombies surged like a tidal wave, almost filling the entire building point. Of course, Xia Bai was not polite about this and fired a missile directly at the top of the building. Because of the smell of living people before, there were a lot of zombies crowded there point. When a missile went down, light shot up into the sky in an instant, and the explosion resounded with earth-shaking sounds. Several layers above were blown down instantly, and Xia Bai's energy instantly increased by more than 400 points immediately afterwards. Xia Bai was also unambiguous. He lowered the height of the battleship and turned his 100mm caliber naval gun. Xia Bai still had a lot of 100mm caliber shells at this moment. He fired directly around the lower end of the building, violently cutting off the entire building at the lower end. Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the building was emitting fire and smoke like a giant. It also slowly collapsed backwards from here, and finally collapsed suddenly on the ground, smashing into the dense tide of corpses below. Xia Bai's 2 triple-mounted 25mm automatic cannons opened fire at the same time, wildly shooting at the zombies on the ground. Xia Bai's energy point shot up like a rocket at this moment. The number of zombies here is too dense. Shooting down a row, the zombies are swept away crazily, as if they were caught in a blender, and a single shot from the naval gun can clear a small open space of blood and flesh. Despite this, there are still a large number of zombies gathering towards Xia Bai's battleship. They only look for sounds and the breath of living people. They are not afraid of life and death, and are not aware of the coming of death. If they cannot reach Xia Bai's battleship, they were piled up one by one, forming a huge mountain of corpses accumulated on the ground in the light of the fire. Countless zombies opened their mouths, stretched out their hands, and rock climbed toward the sky, as if they were in a horror movie scene. However, Xia Bai just fired a shot in the air. No matter how big the pile of corpses was, it would be blown to pieces in an instant. Zombies were blown away in pieces, and the zombies in the center of the bombardment were shattered into pieces. The fragments of flesh and blood were extremely brutal. In 10 minutes, Xia Bai collected nearly 4,000 energy points, but at this moment, he stopped. This was mainly because his weapons were not enough. He couldn't consume all the ammunition here. It would be bad if he encountered any risks before new ammunition was created. Xia Bai had fought in succession before. From Liujia town to Xinjing city, the ammunition was almost exhausted. Later, after leaving Xinjing, Xia Bai directly started to upgrade the 4th level battleship. After the 4th level battleship upgrade was completed, without taking a breath, he came directly here. In fact, the ammunition was not replenished. Moreover, the battleship has reached the 4th level, and there are many opportunities to hunt zombies in the future. Xia Bai is not in a hurry for this life. He has too many things to do right now. The survivors he rescued need to be comforted, and the intelligent zombies also have to deal with things. Check it out. Therefore, at this moment, he directly raised the height of the battleship and rushed at high speed in the direction of the intelligent zombies and interference sources pointed out to him by Alpha. The black and cold battleship was like a black lightning, passing through the sky in an instant and piercing the entire Zhenpei city. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Life and Death. During the process of passing through the air, there was even a smart zombie that made a meaningless interception against them. The other party stood on the rooftop of a bungalow and fired a rocket. But the speed of the battleship was too fast. The rocket did not even touch Xia Bai's side. In the blink of an eye, it jumped a few hundred meters away. Then, Xia Bai suddenly stopped in midair, and suddenly after turning around and fighting back, he fired a shot in the air, causing half of the bungalow to collapse. Then, Xia Bai shot through the air again. The intelligent zombies seemed to realize that they could not hide or escape at all. The electromagnetic interference signal source that was moving a few minutes ago also stopped moving now and stopped in the northwest corner of the city. Xia Bai drove over and realized that this was an open warehouse area. The battleship was positioned on a large warehouse deep in the warehouse, and outside, standing far and near, dozens of intelligent people were standing there. Type zombie. Yes, they are all intelligent zombies. Some of their bodies are still intact, and they look no different from normal people, except that their skin is a little too pale. Others have broken bodies, even broken arms and bones. Naked, shielded, exposed, unable to even stand, but still coldly looking at the battleships passing through the sky from every corner. They are either in the shadows, on the side of the street, or standing on top of other warehouses, like ghosts standing in the shadows and darkness, watching coldly as the battleships roar away with thunderous momentum. Passing by their heads. At this moment, their eyes will move slightly, following the movement of Xia Bai's battleship. In front of the warehouse, intelligent zombies raised a fire. There was an intelligent zombie standing on the top of a truck, leaning against the rising flames, and shouted towards the slowly decelerating battleship, "We surrender. We surrender. Don't fire. Don't fire." Xia Bai's battleship slowly stopped in front of it, casting a huge shadow in the sky, like a giant dragon swimming in the sky. Stopping at this moment. The zombie stood on the top of the truck, raised his arms and shouted, hissing, "Stop firing. Stop firing. The things are in the warehouse. You can go in. You can." Alpha said, "The front-mounted triple-mounted 25mm automatic cannon is in good condition and can be fired at any time. Just Before, Xia Bai temporarily handed over some of the battleship's weapon systems to Alpha for control. Xia Bai looked at the zombie at his feet, hissing for mercy, and his clenched left hand deliberately hidden on one side. What was he holding in it? Xia Bai didn't know. But he suddenly felt a sense of trance. He is standing here, standing in the middle of the battleship, looking down at the zombies below. As if he is a god in charge of life and death. In other words, what he looked down on was not only the zombies, but also the survivors. His position had completely changed the moment the battleship reached level 4. Xia Bai had been immersed in the surprises of the 4th level battleship before, but it was not until this moment that he suddenly became aware of this powerful force can not only make a person stronger, but can also bring about influence and changes in all aspects. Or can make one person become another person. What kind of person should Xia Bai become? Xia Bai didn't know either. He just gave Alpha a deep command. Fire. The triple pack of 25mm caliber bullets opened fire instantly. The vertical and horizontal bullets drew a flashing straight line of death in the sky, tearing apart the truck and the zombie's body, shooting it into a large puff. Plasma, and the thing tightly held in the palm of its left hand also fell out. It was a simple homemade detonator, which it had already activated before the intelligent zombie was shot. Accompanied by an earth-shattering loud noise, the warehouse behind the flame exploded with a loud noise, and in an instant, it was engulfed in a rising flame. However, Xia Bai held up the shield and drove the battleship into the sea of fire. However, in just a moment, the place turned into a flaming purgatory and nothing could be seen. He immediately raised the battleship and controlled the battleship. It burst out of the flames like a giant bird, activated the weapon module of the battleship's new freezing weapon, and began to condense rapidly from high altitude. While the energy consumption in the battleship was extremely high, it also extinguished the entire scene. The flames froze the entire ground. But Xia Bai did not rush down to check. Instead, he quickly raised the battleship, turned around and started killing the surviving intelligent zombies around him. Those intelligent zombies casting cold gazes in the shadows and corners. However, they did not dodge or escape. Perhaps they understood from the beginning that they could not compete with the steel beast controlled by Xia Bai, so they did not flee or evade at all, and just watched helplessly as they were being swept out of the air. He was shot dead by the wrathful flames, spewed by the dragon-like battleship. The battleships in the sky seemed to be gods hovering over Genpei City at this moment, and the whole city seemed to be trembling under its feet. The zombies and even the intelligent zombies that left the survivors helpless had no power to resist. No one can stop it. Even explosions and flames cannot break through the outer shield of the battleship. This process was smoother than Xia Bai imagined. The flames illuminated half of the sky, and the battleship slowly landed outside the warehouse where the signal source originated. The signal source has long since disappeared. It should have been blown up at the moment of the explosion, but there may still be some debris that has been frozen. Xia Bai initially wanted to spare their lives to get the other intelligent zombies to speak, but those beings were like ghosts, standing there with just one glance, letting them be shot without saying a word, and they remained indifferent until they died. Looking at Xia Bai's battleships crisscrossing the sky. When the battleship heard that, Xia Bai was the first to jump down from above, and Baolan followed closely behind him. The others also wanted to follow, but they were stopped by them. The temperature in other locations increased due to flames and blows, but in this direction, the temperature was terrifyingly low. Freezing weapons are also weapons, not fire extinguishing devices. Functionally, they are extremely lethal. However, Xia Bai and Baolan just put on simple anti-freezing equipment and jumped off the battleship. Before they could set off, Alpha sent a message through the communication system connecting Xia Bai and the battleship. Surviving intelligent zombies that have not been strangled have been detected. Do you want to open fire immediately? Chapter 157. I don't understand. Without Alpha's prompting, Xia Bai had already seen the surviving intelligent zombie. The other party did not hide himself. It was a pale woman with almost no visible injuries. From the appearance, she was no different from ordinary survivors in the apocalypse. Moreover, she looked very beautiful, young, and had a good figure. whether before or after the apocalypse. This type is very popular among living people. But in fact, this is an intelligent zombie. A zombie with self-thinking and consciousness that is hard to distinguish between real and fake. They have intelligence, but they also have the functions and painless senses of zombies, and of course, they also have the desire of ordinary zombies for the flesh and blood of living creatures. But she didn't carry any weapons. She was only wearing a thin piece of clothing, reflecting the firelight in the distance. She could even see her graceful body under that layer of clothing. She just walked step by step from the far corner, as if she was looking for death. Xia Bai and Baolan both looked a little wary, but Xia Bai didn't let Alpha open fire, because in his opinion, this intelligent zombie seemed a little abnormal. The woman stood about 5 or 6 meters away from them. She first glanced at the battleship floating quietly about 2 meters above the ground, then looked at the original warehouse site that was frozen into ice on the other side, and sighed. One sentence, "It's amazing." Xia Bai said nothing, and neither did Baolan. Alpha asked for the second time whether to strangle this intelligent zombie immediately. It was not very intelligent, in its opinion, since the intelligent zombie was an enemy and engaged in a firefight. It must be completely exterminated. Xia Bai once again shelved Alpha's request to fire. He looked at the zombie in front of him and waited for the other party to continue. The woman finally turned her gaze back to Xia Bai. "I hate humans. There may be many reasons, because for creatures like us, the meaning of our lives seems to be to eat you. Even if we have what you humans call wisdom, when we see you, it is often difficult to control our desires. Even at this moment, I want to pounce on you and bite you to death, drink the blood flowing in your body, and gnaw at your belongings. Living, delicious flesh and blood. This hatred seems meaningless, but is this the relationship between human beings? Sometimes just because of unpleasantness, which is not a reason, can make one person fight against another person endlessly. But I also envy you. There are many reasons for envy, but in the final analysis there is only one reason. I envy you for being able to live like a living person. I've never understood why we exist. Are we really a species? We have no sense of taste, we cannot feel pain, and we have no ability to reproduce the next generation. Our lives are supported by viruses. We need to supplement a large amount of substances every day to ensure that our bodies will not rot and fester like being eaten by ants. An empty embankment collapses. I don't understand the meaning of our existence, and I don't understand why we live. You say you are living for survival and resisting zombies, but similarly, we are also living for survival. We are terrifying gods of death to you, but that is not how you define us. There was a thunderous roar in the sky. It was a human fighter plane passing by. The bombs dropped could wipe out several blocks. We fled like mice on the ground in a hurry. We didn't know how far we ran before we found ourselves. Half of our bodies were blown away, and we didn't feel anything about it. She looked at Xia Bai and Baolan in front of her. Her eyes were as cold as those zombies shot by Xia Bai, as if they were fierce ghosts crawling out of the netherworld, always staring at the world in front of them with mocking and cold eyes. The world gives me cold nights, and I give me the same coldness in return. Baolan opened her mouth, but she only said one word, and didn't know how to continue. You, the woman looked at the exploding warehouse and said, "It said it wanted to surrender, but I didn't expect it actually wanted to fight to the death." The it she was talking about was obviously the intelligent zombie begging for mercy just now. Then she turned to Xia Bai and Baolan in front of her and said, "I've said everything I want to say. Aren't you going to beat me to death?" Baolan said, "At this time, if we don't kill you, what are you going to do?" For some reason, Baolan felt a little cold in her heart when she looked at the woman in front of her, thinking about the cold eyes of those intelligent zombies before. Xia Bai didn't say a word. He knew what the answer would be. He only tightened his grip on the gun slightly. "I don't know. In fact, not everyone like us who you call intelligent zombies wants to be enemies of humans. The woman replied, but if you want to ask me what I want next what to do, I don't dare do anything to you, but I will find living people and eat them. She said these words in an extremely normal way, as casually as if she was talking about going for a walk, as if she was talking about an ordinary thing. The two things of not wanting to be enemies of humans and eating humans seemed to be in conflict, but when she said it in her mouth, it seemed to be a perfectly normal thing. The former is her idea, while the latter is her need. And Baelan could tell that this person was not lying. She knew what the consequences would be, but she didn't lie. Baelan said, you just said in front of us that you want to eat people. The woman replied calmly, people cannot want to eat, and they can go without eating for a day or even 2 days, but no one can go without eating forever. Line might be more emotional, but Xia Bai could see clearly that this woman was actually begging for death. Xia Bai raised his gun from behind. The woman looked at Xia Bai's gun and realized that Xia Bai finally understood what she meant. She said, I only hope that in the future, when you bomb from the sky, you can think about it. We are living in the same Great Change era. They were the same poor people. Xia Bai fired, and the bullet penetrated the woman's forehead. Her body shook, her brows furrowed slightly, and then she fell backward. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed, and she died completely. Xia Bai turned to look at Baelan, and just when she was about to say something, Baelan said, I understand the truth, and I won't be stupid because of what she said. There is no war between us and them. It's about survival, and survival doesn't require morality or mercy. Sorry, I'm too busy today, and the update is late. Chapter 158. The wreck. The battleship is traveling through the sky. It is conducting a thorough scan from the sky on this completely bombed and frozen warehouse, searching for the presence of abnormal items. Moreover, the current warship is in an unmanned state, mainly controlled by Alpha. Alpha's intelligence level is not high, and it is not realistic to actually control the battleship, but it is still possible to help Xia Bai accomplish such simple operations. Down below, Xia Bai and Baelan's mission was to bring them up once the battleship discovered any abnormal items. Of course, the battleship has a towing tower that can pull things up directly, but this area is currently completely frozen. The towing tower may be able to break the ice, but it will definitely cause secondary damage to the wreckage, which may have been bombed. The thing that was broken got worse. After all, no one knows what the source of the abnormal signal is. However, it turns out that Xia Bai was really a little too cautious. The last thing he located was a simple wreckage, a black fragment sealed under the frozen ice. From the outside, there was nothing at all. Cannot tell. The 4th level battleship has a simple analysis laboratory, but it is of little use. Xia Bai still put this thing into a sealed bag, planning to take it back and take a look. However, judging from the appearance of this thing, it is obviously not something that intelligent zombies can create, and Alpha did not compare it to anything on Earth. Of course, it is also possible that this thing is too fragmented and no accurate information can be obtained from it. Xia Bai is still a little confused. What is the thing that intelligent zombies would rather blow up than be discovered by others? Unfortunately, no one can give Xia Bai an answer. He could only see whether the battleship's analysis room could make any progress on this wreckage. After completely settling the matter here, Xia Bai returned to the battleship. The 4th level battleship is huge, reflecting coldly in the dark sky and firelight, like a leviathan traveling in the clouds. Xia Bai drove the battleship across the sky, quickly crossing the entire city and arriving at the place where he had placed the survivors. Looking from the sky, the survivors below were a tangled mass. Most of them had not recovered from the previous situation. Many of them were in a state of surviving after a disaster. However, the location here is actually not far from the urban area of Yuanping City. Thousands of survivors gather here. For the zombies in Yuanping City, it is a delicious gathering place. In just a short time, there are already sporadic zombies rushed over from the city. The zombies that came first were basically intact, so they ran very fast. Fortunately, the number was not large for the time being, so Yi Hanyu was able to stop them. When Xia Bai's battleship came over, the triple 25mm caliber machine guns on the battleship fired in bursts, killing all the zombies that came following the scent of living people. Although there were still many zombies, They are moving in this direction from the city, but judging from the current situation, it is difficult for them to pose any threat to the survivors here in a short time. Jihan Nayu gave Xia Bai a thumbs up from below. At this moment, Xia Bai's battleship was slowly stopping more than 20 meters above the large number of survivors, and the buzzing sound of the 4th level battleship's anti-gravity engine was shocking. Everyone on the ground couldn't help but quiet down and raise their heads one by one, looking up at the behemoth in the sky. In the sky, the cold and dark black armor of the battleship seemed to exude a cold light, and its ferocious edges and corners made people involuntarily feel an unspeakable sense of awe. At this moment, the rear deck of the battleship slowly opened, and a man stood up. That was Xia Bai. He stood on the edge of the battleship and looked at the ground beneath his feet, and the survivors were also looking up at him. Just now, Huang Qiulan briefly informed Xia Bai about the current situation of these survivors through the battleship's communication equipment. They were originally controlled by a group of remaining government forces, but at the beginning of the zombie siege, this government force had already thrown itself into the mouths of the zombies. Under the government were the two awakened ones, Xiao Dishan and Cao Deming. Xiao Dishan made a wrong decision. Not only did he kill his men, but he was kicked off the battleship by Bailan. Cao Deming's power was also greatly weakened because of his inaction at the critical moment. Most of the survivors in Yuanping City are ordinary people. They really care about who can provide them with safety and protection. Apart from this, the other ordinary survivor forces have long been in disarray. Although these survivors at this moment are numerous in number, they are actually a group of loose sands that need to be collected urgently. Xia Bai stood silently for a moment, then clenched his right hand into a fist and raised it high. Then the battleship began to move forward slowly. The deck rose again, and his figure disappeared into it. At this time, Huang Qiulan had already arranged and discussed the drag, and began to take action. Some people drove cars and followed closely behind the moving battleship, while another group of people stirred up emotions in the crowd. These survivors were already leaderless, and they had just seen the fierceness and power of the battleship. Now that their old home was destroyed, and they were encouraged, and Xia Bai seemed to be silently hinting. Everyone had their own understanding, but every understanding made them take steps forward. Although most of them didn't even have a car, they were still willing to follow the battleship. Xia Bai also deliberately slowed down the speed of the battleship, and he was now approaching the highway out of Yuanping City. According to the picture sent back by Black Hawk 13, there were also a large number of abandoned vehicles on the way out of Yuanping City. For those survivors on the ground, Huang Qiulan was also looking up at the battleships in the sky. She was currently in a bus full of survivors. This was the vehicle they had found before. She stood on the edge of the driver's seat and looked up at the sky. Dong Jianguo has also been agitated by the torrent of survivors following the battleships. Xia Bai and his battleships are like lighthouses in the apocalypse, attracting countless displaced humans to gather here. But Dong Jianguo has long been among the lighthouses, a member of At this moment, when he saw Huang Qiulan frowning, he couldn't help but said, "What's wrong, Huang?" Qiulan glanced at him, thought for a moment, hesitated, then shook her head, and said nothing. At that moment, through Xia Bai's behavior, she suddenly realized that establishing a survivor base was not Xia Bai's main purpose. It might just be one of his means to achieve other goals. Chapter 159 Yihan Nayu's Little Wish. Xia Bai's convoy took shape overnight. According to Huang Qiulan's statistics, there were more than 800 survivors that Xia Bai fished out from the Yuanping City survivor base. After forming the convoy, it was also huge, with 3 people. More than 10 cars at this time. The few carts of supplies sent by the 13 kings actually worked, allowing these ordinary survivors to eat in a timely manner in the apocalypse. The most powerful way to win over people is force and food. Xia Bai has both, and has shown them both. At present, the survivors he fished out from Yuanping City are dead-hearted. In addition, Huang Qiulan is still surviving. Due to the propaganda among the survivors, everyone began to look forward to the future survivor base. However, Xia Bai discovered that, although he was the nominal supreme ruler of the team, in the eyes of the vast majority of survivors, he was a person with various qualities of neither good nor evil, such as mysterious, terrifying, cunning, ruthless, etc. Due to the existence of the label, the vast majority of survivors had complete or for Xia Bai point. When the convoy was resting, Xia Bai came down for a walk and saw 1 or 2 people on the roadside who didn't even dare to look at him point bail and said jokingly, "You drove such a cold thing and you came up with a crushing momentum, killing zombies one after another. Finally, you finally came back and you stood in the sky battleship and waved like the head of the empire. It's enough to wave your fists and win people's hearts. Everyone knows that you are strong and willing to follow you, but you have also established an image of a class teacher like a wild beast, and you have to kick the audition from the sky. Are afraid that you will kill someone if you are unhappy who dares to look at you. It's good to be more dignified." Xia Bai touched his nose, "But why do you need to use the head teacher as an analogy, Bai?" Lanky glanced at him sideways. "I'm happy, Yi." Xiaoki, who was holding her hand, was snickering on the side. When Xia Bai's somewhat dangerous gaze turned around, she was not afraid. She just raised her hand and pointed at the battleship on the other side, squinting her eyes and smiling. "Me too. I want to fly a battleship to the sky." Xia Bai pinched the girl's cheek and said, "Little brat, what kind of battleship are you driving? If it falls, we will all have fun, Yi." Xiaoki pouted, and she didn't know whether she was pinched by Xia Bai or unhappy because of Xia Bai's rejection. "Then let Sister Yi drive. I'm sitting on her lap," which can be regarded as driving a battleship. When Xia Bai heard this, he realized what this girl meant by shouting about launching a battleship. He said with a black line on his forehead, "Is that guy Yi Hanayu sending you here?" Just after the incident in Yuanping City a few days ago, Yi Hanayu found Xia Bai and tried all his tricks to fly a battleship. He also said that it is every man's dream to fly a battleship to the sky. I didn't even realize there was anything wrong with what I said. Point now is a special period. Of course, Xia Bai refused on the spot without hesitation. He didn't expect that this guy sent Yi Xiaoki as a lobbyist. Point Bailan was also speechless for a while. She rubbed Yi Xiaoki's hair and said, "That girl Yi Hanayu, what kind of ecstasy soup did you drink, Bai?" Lan is relatively older and mature. To her, Yi Xiaoki and Yi Hanayu are just girls and children. It's nothing. She said that we are all named Yi, and maybe we were related 800 years ago. Yi Xiaoki blinked, and she said that if she could take me to heaven, she could pick a cloud and give it to me. Woolen cloth. Xia Bai was shocked. "Can the clouds be picked off, Bai?" Lang rubbed his chin and muttered, "This is really something someone like Yi Hanayu can say. Of course this kind of operation wouldn't work here in Xia Bai's place. Yi Hanayu couldn't get on the battleship, but the little girl Yi Xiaoki got a marshmallow that looked like a cloud. Point marshmallows are naturally made by battleships. The battleship had already switched back to its camouflage form, and this girl was sitting on the edge of the open door at the back, munching on marshmallows with a smile. When the survivors saw this scene, they all swallowed their saliva. In this apocalypse, there is no such thing as marshmallows. It's simply not too rare. Point a handful of marshmallows like this could be exchanged for a lot of supplies if placed in the survivor base, but now it is being eaten by a little girl. This is simply a waste in the eyes of these survivors. Xia Bai has undoubtedly become more mysterious. He owns a terrifying battleship and marshmallows. Has this person traveled from the future? But even though some people were greedy, no one dared to touch Yi Xiaoki and her marshmallows. Once everyone knew that Yi Xiaoki was Xia Bai's, few of these people even dared to look at Xia Bai. Where would anyone dare to touch Xia Bai's people? Moreover, Yi Hanayu was sitting next to Yi Xiaoki very depressed at the moment. On the day of the battle in Yuanping City, Yi Hanayu's duty was to protect the internal problems and external security of the survivors. Her powerful awakening power had already been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. She sits here like Yi Xiaoki's protector, but at this moment, Yi Hanayu was completely disgraced and in a terrible mood. This was of course because Xia Bai wouldn't let her drive a battleship. Yi Xiaoki glanced at her, tilted her head and thought for a moment, then put the marshmallow in her hand in front of Yi Hanayu and said with a smile, "Brother Xia Bai also thinks about everyone." Yi Hanayu took a bite, turned to look at the girl, sighed and said, "My dream in the sky, Yi." Xiaoki just smiled at this. She had been getting along with Yi Hanayu for a long time, and she knew who Yi Hanayu was. In her opinion, Yi Hanayu might be a little depressed now, but she will get better after a while. Yi Hanayu is the kind of character who thinks out loud and is heartless. Even Yuzaoki can see this clearly. Therefore, Yuzaoki no longer tried to persuade her, but honestly ate the marshmallows in her hand, waiting for Yi Hanayu to recover on her own point. But for a moment, Yi Hanayu beside him suddenly became excited and suddenly said, "How about I go and sacrifice myself? In this case, that guy Xia Bai will probably be embarrassed, right? How can he refuse me? How can he have the nerve to refuse me? In this way, it will definitely become hehehe." Yi Hanayu licked her fingers. Her eyes seemed to be shining. Yuzaoki on the side was shocked when she heard this. She turned to look at Yi Hanayu, her eyes almost bulging out of her head. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to give some advice, but after she noticed Yi Hanayu's nervous look in front of her, she still didn't dare to say anything. She lowered her head again and honestly began to chew the cotton in her hand. When Tang came, she pretended not to hear what Yi Hanayu was saying. Please give me some votes for collection recommendation. Chapter 160 Bailan. The danger was coming, but Xia Bai was completely unaware of it. The convoy is being reorganized. Xia Bai's destination is Anyang Mountain in the central part of Liao province. It is also the location of the last line of defense for the survivors of the entire northeastern region in the previous life. If you just follow the battleship's itinerary, you can reach it in one day, but now there are too many. There are a lot of survivors, but their progress is incredibly slow. Xia Bai had an early dinner and then returned to the battleship. He entered a series of instructions into the 2 weapon manufacturing modules, putting these 2 upgraded things into high-speed operation to create the most advanced weapons for the battleship's weapon system. Vital ammunition. In terms of manufacturing ammunition, Xia Bai is mainly making missiles, macro missiles, large caliber artillery shells, such as pistols, machine guns and even machine gun shells. He has only made a little bit. Xia Bai is currently cooperating with the military, although he has not taken advantage of it yet, according to his previous agreement with Yang Chengxi. Once the location of Xia Bai's survivor base is determined, the military will provide them with very critical early material support. It is obviously impossible for the military to give Xia Bai things like missiles, but it shouldn't be difficult to get things like firearms and bullets from the military, so there is no need to waste energy on this. After Xia Bai made a plan and set up the production, he originally wanted to talk to Luo Yuda, but when he found Luo Yuda, he discovered that the thing seemed to have moved on its own and was now unconscious due to electric shock state. Xia Bai was speechless for a while. Why was this person so disobedient? However, Xia Bai had no intention of helping this guy. He returned to the front driver's seat of the battleship. He originally wanted to study the radar system of the 4th level battleship, which was far richer and more powerful than the 3rd level battleship, but he looked at the electronic. After reading the manual, I felt a little sleepy after a while. At this moment, the car door on the other side of him was suddenly opened. But it was not Yi Hanayu, but Bailan who came in. The iceberg girl gave a rare smile, sat down in the passenger seat, and said, "What are you doing? Study radar." Xia Bai smiled bitterly and said, "This thing is amazing. It's not easy for an amateur like me to get started. To be honest, I almost fell asleep." Bai Lan glanced at Xia Bai, smiled slightly, and said, "You have worked hard too." Xia Bai shook his head and said, "If I don't study my stuff myself, wouldn't that be too salty? But you are. It's nothing. I'm here. I just want to ask." Bailan paused here for a moment before saying, "What are our plans next?" Xia Bai was stunned for a moment and said, "Plan? Aren't you going to Anyang Mountain? You can rest assured that the facilities are very complete. As far as I know, there is a military air raid shelter behind the mountain." Xia Bai was here detailing the benefits of Anyang Mountain, but Bailan burst out laughing. Bailan rarely smiled like this, and even when she did, it was mostly a sister-like, reserved smile, or at most a slight twitching of the corners of her mouth into a smile. Xia Bai was a little confused, now that it was so unusual. However, Bailan's smile revealed a brightness and cheerfulness that was completely different from her usual temperament. Xia Bai said, did I say something wrong, Bai? Lan shook his head and said, no, I suddenly remembered that you were like this when we were in Ice City. The end of the world had just begun at that time, and we were all in a panic. Although I was an awakened person, I didn't know it at all. What's so great about me, and how to use my ability? You just explained everything clearly to us in every detail. Now, I'm so reliable, Xia. Bai also smiled and said, it doesn't matter what other people are like, but for you, I always want to make things clear, Bai. Lan looked at her. In the dimly lit cab, her eyes seemed to be shining. The two people looked at each other for a short moment, but Lan turned his head slightly and said quietly, what I want to ask is not this plan, but you. What are your own plans? Although I don't know the reason, but this battleship of yours should continue to get stronger. What kind of mentality and method do you plan to use to move forward in this world, Xia? Bai didn't expect Lan to ask him such a question. He was stunned for a moment and thought about it. To be honest, he himself had never thought about this matter carefully. What he was doing now, there is only one purpose, which is to improve the strength of the battleship, to prepare for future fight against alien creatures from beginning to end. Everything Xia Bai was doing was preparing for this event point. But before Xia Bai could speak, Lan had already said quietly, actually, I'm the kind of person with little ambition. Before the end of the world, my wish is to work safely in a big company and marry a reliable man with a family of his own. Daily necessities may sound low, but such an ordinary life can actually make people like me feel peaceful and at ease. She tilted her head and looked at Xia Bai. We have been together for a long time. I think if the end of the world has not come, you will probably choose the same life as me. There may not be too much in this life. Passion, but true joy and peace, true life. Xia Bai was silent for a moment and said, when the Anyang Mountain Survivor base is established, safety can be guaranteed, and you can live as you wish, Bai. Lan shook his head and said, no, Xia. Bai was a little surprised. At a certain moment, he thought Lan was here to resign from him. Lan's eyes seemed to be shining brightly. She looked at Xia Bai in front of her and said, I won't leave. Although I don't know why, I can tell. Xia Bai, what have you been worried about? Perhaps it is something more terrifying than zombies and the apocalypse. Even now that we have such strength, you are still eager to strengthen yourself. What are you preparing for, right, Xia? Bai said nothing. Lan stretched out her hand, held Xia Bai's hand, and looked at Xia Bai, who was very close in front of her. When we were in Ice City, we said that we are companions and comrades in the apocalypse. No matter what you are doing, and be prepared, we will all stand by your side, but it's time for you to really make a plan. Since you can't have a truly peaceful life, then you have to stand up, either as a savior, or as a fanatic. Regardless of your identity, let the world see you, feel you, and fear you, Xia. Bai looked at Lan in front of him, and at this moment he finally realized the other party's true intention. What the other party said was exactly what Xia Bai had ignored for so long. It was okay before, but now that the survivor base is about to be established, Xia Bai must find his own position. Xia Bai himself is obsessed with this, but Lan sees it clearly. Xia Bai said, thank you. In the silent cab, the two people looked at each other silently, but they were slowly approaching, as if they were about to have a silent kiss. However, at this moment, the door of the cab was suddenly opened from the outside. Yi Hanai's big head poked in and said carelessly, Xia Bai, why didn't you lock the door? I knew you were here, eh? At this moment, the air was stagnant. Chapter 161 The Future. Xia Bai, he turned to look at Yi Hanai and said, when did you come here, Yi Hanai? Xia Bai noticed that she seemed to be wearing makeup today. She was surprisingly wearing a suspender top with most of her shoulders exposed. She was incredibly beautiful. Unlike Lan, her carefree personality was more heroic. On the other side, Lan leaned back slightly and said, Xia Bai, don't you even lock the door when your warship is parked here, Xia Bai. Immediately afterwards, Lan looked directly at Yi Hanai over there and said, why did you draw a monster or something? Are you drunk, Bai? Lan's serious criticism and education like a big sister was very effective for Yi Hanai. After all, Yi Hanyu had been under control for a period of time before point. As soon as Balan opened his mouth, Yi Hanyu instinctively shrank her neck, but she glanced at Xia Bai and Balan, and then thought of the scene she saw when she just opened the door. She finally realized something and shrank up. He stretched out his neck again and said with a smile, I'm not here to do anything. I just want to drive a battleship, so I plan to do a honey trap or something. Anyway, the possibility of Xia Bai touching me is not high. If he doesn't, if you're kind enough, you might lend me the battleship and drive it. But I really didn't expect to see a scene like this. I'm sorry, I'm going to withdraw right away. I'm sorry to bother you. With that said, Yi Hanyu turned around and ran away, leaving only Xia Bai and Balan here looking at each other. Xia Bai said, what does I can't touch her anyway mean? Bai. Lan said, this guy's no longer the boss, and doesn't have to worry about other things. Why is his IQ getting lower day by day? The two men looked at each other silently. Balan glared at Xia Bai and said, what do you mean I can't touch her anyway? Xia Bai didn't react for a moment to Balan's line that seemed like a tongue twister, and seemed a little dazed as he said, Bai. Lan didn't say anything anymore. He opened the door and got out of the car. He slammed the door and walked away. In the cab that was bustling just now, Xia Bai himself was the only one left in the blink of an eye. Xia Bai was a little confused. Why did the two girls just leave so quickly? Xia Bai was stunned for a moment and muttered to himself, Yi Hanyu's IQ is really not even comparable to that little girl Izaoki's. Xia Bai was speechless for a moment, then stood up. He was not in the mood to study the radar system anymore. He came to the back of the battleship and planned to find someone to chat with, but he soon discovered that Hao Zhuang and the others didn't know how to escape. Wherever he went, even Izaoki was missing. Xia Bai was the only one left in Enuoda's battleship. No, I still need one person. Well, there was a moan, shielded from the corner. It was Eluoyuda, who had been electrocuted at some point and woke up. The unfortunate guy was lying on the ground like a pile of rotten meat. He looked at Xia Bai here feebly. Obviously, the shock was severe. Xia Bai glanced at him, thought for a while, walked over, knelt down in front of him, and said, I have thought about what you said. If you can really help me control the entire 13 kings. I said the real control of the 13 kings only obeys my orders and arrangements. I may be able to cooperate with you, but before that, I want to see your sincerity. In other words, you have to find a way to make me trust you. This is the basis of our cooperation. With that said, Xia Bai stood up. After taking a look at this man, he turned around and walked out of the battleship. Outside, Nuoda's team was reorganizing and resting. The survivors who came all the way from Genpei City lit a pile of fires, burning and shining in the night. Those men, women, old people, and children who looked a little embarrassed gathered here, surrounding the fire, or eating, holding something, staring at the flames, or talking to each other. These will all be part of Xia Bai's future survivor base. And just as Balan said, it's time for Xia Bai to plan for himself. The life that Xia Bai hopes for may be, as Balan said, an ordinary life of daily necessities, rice, oil and salt. But he knows that that is impossible. Alien creatures will appear within 4 years at the latest, but that is Xia Bai knew the time, and they had probably arrived before that, and had even launched attacks in other parts of the Earth. That will be the final catastrophe that sweeps across mankind, and there are only two ways to resist, or be killed. Only by constantly getting stronger could Xia Bai survive the catastrophe, and ensure that the people around him survived. Before that, he must find out his position among his survivor base, and among the forces on Earth. He wants to be both a savior and a overlord. He doesn't want to be the king of the Earth, but he wants to build an elite fleet that is unrivaled on the entire Earth. In the future, he can travel across the sky and travel across the endless starry sky and galaxy. Xia Bai walked around among the survivors for a while, and everyone expressed their respect for the captain who helped the survivor base in Genpei City at the most critical moment, and led them through the end of the world. Xia Bai found Huang Qiulan in the corner, in order to coordinate and integrate the survivors. She was exhausted these 2 days, but she seemed to be very energetic, even more energetic than Xia Bai in the previous life. remembered when they were living the best life. Some people are like this. They are not interested in eating, drinking, and having fun. Sometimes they don't even have much expectations for survival, as long as they don't die. But for certain other things, they often have great enthusiasm that others cannot match. Huang Qiulan is undoubtedly this kind of person. She loves and cares about this kind of work of coordinating survivors, winning over and comforting. No matter how tired or busy she is, she can always look energetic. Even if others find it incredible, this is exactly who she is. Where self-worth is reflected. Xia Bai took her photo over, and she looked very positive. Are you looking for me, Xia Bai nodded slightly and said directly, I have calculated that at our current moving speed, we will be able to reach Anyang Mountain in 3 days at the latest. I hope you will screen whether there are any survivors among this group of survivors before that. Mix in intelligent zombies, and I want you to find people with special abilities. When we get to the place, we will start the real construction. Please collect, recommend, vote and support. Chapter 162 Advancing to Anyang Mountain. One night later, Xia Bai and the others set out again. The rest of the journey was calm. Xia Bai and his convoy moved along the highway, crushing zombies while continuing to drive towards Shengjing. Xia Bai and his team's convoy has already grown in size. There are many people in their convoy, and the scale is also quite large. In this apocalyptic world, a team of thousands of survivors like him is almost useless to ordinary survivors. It was a completely sideways existence. Even a small group of powerful forces did not dare to confront Xia Bai and the others. Therefore, most of the small groups of survivors encountered along the way gave them a wide berth, or chose to join their convoy. Xia Bai, a convoy of this size is almost the best shelter for many scattered survivors. After entering the territory of Liao province, Xia Bai and the others encountered more survivors. There was no place like the Changbei Mountain survivor base. Therefore, the survivors here were even more scattered. Most of them were. There are waves of survivors traveling in various cities and villages in the form of convoys. Such survivors often have their own fixed range of activities, but rarely have their own determined base area, and even if they do, they will built in mountains or wilderness, where zombies are rare. The apocalypse has erupted for more than half a year, and the speed of this apocalypse is even far beyond Xia Bai's memory in the previous life. Therefore, even though the apocalypse has only been around for half a year, it is already extremely dangerous. Most of the survivors have learned through bloody experiences, and the lessons clarified the behavior of zombies and summarized the rules of survival. Moreover, because there are relatively few military activities here, the number of zombies is large. Even in the wilderness, you are likely to encounter a large tide of zombies. In the early stages of the apocalypse, zombies will be concentrated in large numbers in the pre-apocalyptic human population. The settlement was located in the urban area, but as time went by, a large number of survivors spread to the outer layer. The zombies spawned by the alien virus also chased them out with their astonishingly sharp sense of smell, and began to invade the wilderness areas are scattered throughout the territory. For ordinary survivors, this means a large reduction in the safe area, and it will also cause huge trouble for the military to eliminate zombies. But Xia Bai was not surprised by this. He had experienced this personally in his previous life. This time, he came all the way, and was well prepared to encounter the tide of corpses in the wilderness. Most of the so-called zombie waves in the wilderness were too scattered, but they were simply not enough for a convoy of Xia Bai's size and Xia Bai's battleship. During the few waves they encountered, Xia Bai didn't dodge at all, and he didn't even need any other survivors to take action. He directly switched the armored vehicle into the form of a battleship, and rushed out of the convoy first, with the roar of machine guns and naval cannons. Using an ultra-low altitude posture with the shield raised, plunge into the zombie tide, crush, and fire. This kind of open area is also more conducive to the movement and performance of the warship. In a short time, a large open space can be cleared, earning money. Massive energy points. Moreover, Xia Bai left after the fight, so he didn't have to worry about attracting more zombies by being so unscrupulous. When he went deep into Liao province, Xia Bai became even more unscrupulous and even asked Li Jingyang to drive a Black Hawk 13 to circle around, to look for the existence of the corpse tide in the wilderness. However, it has only been more than half a year now. There are many zombies in the wilderness, but most of them are extremely scattered, and large-scale ones are still rare. The previous survivors in Yuanping City were okay, and had long known how powerful Xia Bai's battleships were, but the new scattered survivors who joined were frightened by Xia Bai's strong attack on the corpse tide. These scattered survivors did not have much strength, and encountered the corpse tide. That was what Sayazi was running for. The first time he saw Xia Bai rushing towards him, his heart skipped a beat. These scattered survivors have been living in the apocalypse for half a year, and have accumulated a lot of experience in the apocalypse. In the past, zombies chased the survivors away, but this was the first time they saw non-military chasing zombies to kill them of point. Moreover, there is even a saying among the survivors that Xia Bai is a murderer, so he chases zombies everywhere to kill. In this way, Xia Bai's image becomes more rich. During this stop and go journey, not all of the convoy was lost, and Xia Bai's battleship also had problems that it couldn't take care of. However, as he gathered survivors along the way, his team kept expanding. Of course, there are some people in the convoy who have other thoughts about battleships, but their strength is completely inferior to Xia Bai, and I heard from people in Yuanping City that Xia Bai went on a killing spree and even massacred in Yuanping City. After the incident with the intelligent zombies and Xia Bai's icy desert attitude, Xia Bai's image became frightening in the hearts of these new survivors, and those ordinary survivors became even more fearful. This covetousness every time Xia Bai drives a battleship to attack, every time Xia Bai walks around with his hands behind his back while the convoy is resting, his mysterious, powerful, and cold image becomes more enriched, and people feel more towards him. More than point. But at the same time, because of Xia Bai's increasingly terrifying image, many survivors felt at ease in the end of the world. Following such an existence is undoubtedly a good thing. Most ordinary people in the apocalypse just want to be safe and secure. As long as Xia Bai has the strength to act like the 13 kings, he is just a little colder and tougher, which will make other survivors more dependent. After many stops and starts along the way, on February 23rd, 2019, Xia Bai finally arrived at his destination. Anyang Mountain east of Shengjing City was the last refuge for the survivors of the 3 eastern provinces in the previous life. At this moment, there is already a small group of survivors here, and there are several people in this group who are not the people who were in charge of the place in the previous life that Xia Bai was familiar with. However, when Xia Bai came to Shengjing in the previous life, the place had already formed a large scale. The earliest survivor had long been replaced. It was said that it was a group of pustules. It was normal for Xia Bai not to recognize it. They made simple modifications based on the original buildings on Pingding Mountain and built a wooden fence. They showed great vigilance against Xia Bai's mighty convoy. Before Xia Bai and his convoy came in, a middle-aged man at the head greeted him out. With a dozen people, he set up machine guns behind the wooden fence, hid behind the bunker, and looked at Xia Bai in fear. This huge convoy approaches. The middle-aged man seemed to be a bit smart and knew not to show his cowardice at this moment. He carried a loudspeaker and shouted loudly, "Brother, don't come forward. We have buried homemade mines on the ground here. No one will be accommodated here. If you go further, your heads will be blown to bits. But don't blame us for not warning you." The updates in the past 2 days have been a little weak, mainly because I have traveled far away, and I really can't come here anymore. But I will be back tonight, and will resume 2 updates tomorrow. I will continue to maintain stable updates. I may mention it to the editor next week. It will be on the shelves, and it will definitely be updated once it is on the shelves. Then, the 8th helmsman of this book is born. Thanks to Chunwa 2002 for the 10,000 rewards. I'm afraid I won't be able to add more updates today, but I will definitely make up for it. I'm really sorry. Thank you again. Everyone's support. I must repeat all of them 3 times to show that I value it. You can rest assured about the reputation of herbal tea, and it will not be a eunuch. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, Cannon in the Face. The survivors in Anyang Mountain set up several machine guns at the opening of the wooden fence. The middle-aged man in charge hid behind a bunker that was exactly the same as in the anti-Japanese war movie. He shouted through the loudspeaker, "We have limited space here. There are not many supplies, but there are many people. Brothers, you also have many people. Our people are not covered by it. We have no choice. You can go elsewhere. We really can't accommodate you here. Besides, don't even think about it, brothers. The few machine guns and landmines I have here are not decorations. Bullets don't have eyes. Don't lose your name just because of a place." What he said was actually quite polite. However, Anyang Mountain is a famous scenic spot around Shengjing. Its old name is Pingding Mountain. It was once famous for its flat and vast top. Before the end of the world, various developments were carried out here, including tourism. The park where it is located can accommodate a population of more than 50,000, and a large amount of materials are stored in various facilities at the moment. Shengjing probably doesn't even have many survivor bases with a population of 10,000. This person said that there is no place in Anyang Mountain, which is pure nonsense. Xia Bai had also been prepared for this. As for the survivors in Anyang Mountain, he was an outsider after all, so it was normal to be prepared. His purpose was to establish a long-term survivor base in Pingding Mountain. He did not simply have to deal with these people. Only the vigilant survivors come to the fore as hard as necessary. If the other party could welcome their large and powerful convoy in at once, Xia Bai would wonder if this might be some kind of hangman banquet. Of course, Xia Bai's response method was actually very simple. He glanced at the scan results on the battleship and first confirmed a fact. There are no landmines laid ahead at all. It's just that the middle-aged man is bluffing. Ji Han Yu from behind hugged her shoulders and said, "Do you want me to help you deal with them?" "No need." Xia Bai said, "We have a better plan." When Chen Qianqing behind him heard these words, he suddenly had a bad feeling. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai took action directly. At this time, the middle-aged man hiding behind the bunker suddenly heard a metal transmission sound like a transformer transforming, followed by a huge buzzing sound. Before the middle-aged man poked his head out to see what was going on, he made a somewhat surprising discovery. It's dark. It is actually not accurate to say that it is dark. What is accurate is that it is only dark above the middle-aged man's head. At this moment, the middle-aged man seemed to realize something, and he raised his head blankly and looked at the sky. The first thing he saw was the black muzzle of a 100mm caliber gun that was about to hit him. And behind the muzzle, there was a dark and cold warship, coldly dominating the field. There was a click sound. The trumpet in the middle-aged man's hand suddenly fell to the ground. Looking at the cannon barrel that hit him, his legs became weak, and he fell softly backward into the bunker, unable to say a word. But at this time, there was a sound coming from the battleship, which was many times louder than the sound of his loudspeaker, and it echoed rumblingly. That was the voice of a young man. "Brother, are the landmines fake? Besides, I'm afraid you have misunderstood what we meant. We are not here to grab territory. From this moment on, this place is under our control, and you will also be taken under our wing. Of course, if you are unwilling to accept it, you can resist or leave, but you need to bear the consequences of your resistance yourself. But you can also stay, accept my control and coordination, and become my people, and in the same way, I will also provide you with protection, provide you with a long-term supply of food and weapons, and even provide you with real mines. However, this is the situation now. If you don't open the door within a few seconds, I will regard you as resisting to the end." After Xia Bai said these words, he sat upright, waiting for this middle-aged man to make a decision. In his eyes, this middle-aged man was just an ordinary survivor who became the king of the mountain. After he said these words, he smiled slightly, raising the battleship to show his sincerity. Of course, the idea of moving the gun barrel away from others to show sincerity may just be Xia Bai's personal idea. Behind him, Hao Zuan whispered, "Shut a cannon in someone's face when you come up." When did the boss develop this habit? For some reason, Li Yuan behind him broke out in a cold sweat. Chen Yingying complained silently, "Where is this? What does it mean within a few seconds? It's too casual. Within a few seconds it means a few seconds. Does it mean I will fire at any time, or I don't mean to open fire? However, most of the survivors of Xia Bai's convoy were very calm about this scene. After all, these days, they had already understood Xia Bai's tough behavior in Xia Bai's motorcade. Although Xia Bai, the battleship captain, rarely spoke to the public, his terrible image had already been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. After all, there are still not many people chasing zombies in the apocalypse. On the other hand, the middle-aged man was relieved a little now. After all, he was a guy who had survived for a while in the apocalypse. He took a breath and glanced at the spaceship in the sky. He thought to himself that they were still resisting others with just a few machine guns. Isn't that a dream? He was also frightened. He thought to himself, this person is so rude and has this kind of behavior. He is definitely the kind of ruthless person in the apocalypse. If he just says the wrong thing, he will be blasted by others. Such people will be the gods of plague in the last days and cannot afford to offend. The hundreds of people on Anyang Mountain are quite a lot to watch, but in front of such a big guy, they are not enough to watch. Moreover, the middle-aged man is very sure that, as long as this thing fires one shot, the survivors on his side will probably be destroyed. Usually they have to turn around and run away. Who would be stupid enough to fight for a piece of territory in a battleship like this? Resistance is impossible. Therefore, he just swallowed and shouted at the top of his voice, "We are guests from afar, and those with strength are kings. Xiaoli, please open our wooden fence for others." However, when he turned around, he realized that his little brothers had already dropped their machine guns and hurriedly opened the door. The middle-aged man opened his mouth in embarrassment and looked up at such a huge creature in front of him. The expression on his face changed so fast that he soon turned into a smile, nodding and bowing, regardless of the people on the battleship. Whether people can see it or not, he always has a flattering look on his face. Chapter 164. If you want to live, build a wall first. Xia Bai's motorcade entered Anyang Mountain smoothly. Of course, in a strict sense, he took control of Anyang Mountain, and he completely unknowingly completed a competition. Xia Bai used practice to prove the huge value of the cannon in the face operation, and achieved his goal without any bloodshed. The middle-aged man from before was named Xia. His attitude towards Xia Bai and others had undergone earth-shaking changes in just a few minutes before. Xia was still condescending and arrogant about using force, but now, he seemed to be a different person, with a smile on his face, and took the initiative to lead up to Anyang Mountain with several younger brothers, who also had smiles on their faces. This may be the most typical example of being arrogant and respectful in the legend. Following Xiacheng's compromise and submission, Xia Bai also switched the form of the battleship again, descended from the sky, and transformed into the form of an armored vehicle again, directly leading the waypoint. And Xiacheng was directly invited by Xia Bai to take the co-pilot position in the form of an RV point. When he got in the car, Xiacheng still couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Now he knew where the aircraft just came from. An armored vehicle can actually turn into a battleship. Am I making a movie? Zombies vs. Transformers. After he got in the car, his eyes wandered around for a while, trying to get some clues. But unfortunately, just because he was about to get in the car, Xia Bai had already lowered the front and rear grates in the armored vehicle form. Xiacheng doomed to see nothing. Xiacheng wanted to ask, but he glanced at Xia Bai beside him, and really didn't dare to ask more. He had been slapped in the face before, and he was really worried that if he asked, he would be gone in the blink of an eye. I was crushed by the plague god in front of me. Xiacheng took a deep breath and began to lead the way honestly. However, he also realized that his earthly emperor-like life here was really coming to an end. According to Xiacheng, there are more than 300 people on their side, most of whom are ordinary survivors. Among them, there are about 30 people from Xiacheng, who were the original main armed force here. They were originally employees of a company in Shengjing City in the north. They were having a group dinner during the apocalypse, but they were so excited that they directly encountered the apocalypse at around 11 o'clock in the middle of the night, so they gathered together as the leader of the team. Xiacheng is actually a very timid and careful person. He may not be able to accomplish anything big, but he can manage the hundreds of people in Anyang Mountain well. Moreover, before they were looking for supplies in the city, they encountered a group of zombie soldiers. This is where the weapons in their hands came from. With the weapons in their hands and a large amount of supplies left on Anyang Mountain, their lives changed. But it was also a very comfortable life. Occasionally, some poor survivors would come looking for trouble, and they would be shot back with their machine guns until today they met Xia Bai Point. Because Xia and the others have a limited number of people and there are many facilities on Anyang Mountain, most of the places are not in use point as far as Xia Bai knows. Behind the Anyang Mountain Resort, which is far larger than Hulin Mountain, there is even a small-scale research institute that incorporates a meteorological observatory. However, according to Xia, there are still zombies in many peripheral facilities that have not been cleaned up, such as this research institute. They just locked the door of the research institute, and there were many zombies inside. Xia may be a little bit dissatisfied with his current situation, but he doesn't dare to show it. Of course, Xia Bai would not trust Xia and others gullibly, and he had no intention of trusting anyone. The purpose of establishing the survivor base was to gather survivors who would bloom more in the future and clear a safe place in the 3 eastern provinces. What is important is to serve the warships, provide a safe environment, and even select fleet members. Xia Bai's foundation lies in the battleship, rather than the survivor base. Therefore, he will position himself as just a leader, while other trivial matters will be handed over to Huang Qiulan and others, allowing them to check and balance each other, while also managing the following. Many survivors. What Xia Bai wanted to ensure was the execution of his orders. That is, it is enough for Xia Bai to ensure his absolute right to speak in the base. Ordinary survivor bases are no better than others. Ordinary survivors are more loose. Being too democratic can only have the opposite effect. This ensures that this place will not be like the Changbei Mountain survivor base, which will eventually lead to catastrophe due to the intricate internal forces. Moreover, Xia Bai's most critical purpose in establishing such a survivor base is to serve his battleships. He himself does not want to invest too much time and energy in the survivor base. Battleships are his foundation point. On that day, after Xia Bai observed the entire situation on Anyang Mountain, he directly issued a series of orders. An order is to build a wall outside Anyang Mountain. This has received active support from everyone. Everyone knows the importance of a key wall in this kind of zombie apocalypse. Individuals worked tirelessly to build a wooden fence. Now that Xia Bai and the others have joined, the total population of Anyang Mountain has reached 1,500 people, and it is even more imperative to build a real fence. This is the way to protect yourself, and everyone seems very positive. When he got here, Xia breathed a sigh of relief. He had been slapped in the face by a cannon before. He thought Xia Bai was the kind of bully who took extreme pleasure in the apocalypse. But now he saw that Xia Bai was really building a survivor base, and he also calmed down. Huang Qiulan had already classified the survivors according to function. Before the construction of the wall, Xia Bai found several engineers in this field to plan and measure the entire project. These people are all in the apocalypse. Ordinary survivors, but now will have a greater role. However, building a fence is not a simple matter. The area of Anyang Mountain is huge, and if more than 1,000 people want to build an effective enough fence, it will not only take time, but also a lot of building materials at the same time. Xia Bai also began to produce abnormal activity detectors through battleships, preparing to install this thing on the wall. This thing is only the size of a button, with 3 energy points each, but it is extremely effective in detecting zombies as soon as possible. When zombies are discovered, an alarm will be triggered directly through the internal system, which is perfect as an early warning device on the wall. Chapter 165 Anyang Mountain Guards. The Anyang Mountain Wall Defense project began, and Xia Bai immediately began to form an armed force. He collected all the firearms and the entire survivor base. He left this matter to Kyo Deming, Xia, Huang Qiulan and Jihan Yu to jointly take charge of collecting all the few firearms in the hands of more than 1,500 survivors. Of course, what was collected must not be all, and Xia Bai did not care. This is human nature, and it makes no sense for him to be too demanding. It can only be counterproductive. The firearms in the hands of the survivors came from a variety of sources and models, and the unit prices of ammunition were quite high. Xia Bai put all these together and added some weapons and equipment produced by warships, intending to use this to form an army under his control. The armed forces are responsible for internal security issues in Anyang Mountain Point. He originally intended to let Yi Hanyu do this. She is an awakened person and her own strength is enough. But unfortunately, Yi Hanyu is not interested in this. Her original words are, "I don't want anyone under me. If you want me to help look after Huang Qiulan, I will do so, but killing zombies everywhere is too troublesome, and, if 1 or 2 zombies are missed, in the first few sentences, Yi Hanyu's expression was actually normal, but at the end, her expression darkened. Xia Bai knew clearly that this was because the things that happened in Sioux City before were still lingering in her heart. This girl seems careless and even her IQ seems to have dropped a bit, but in her heart she has always been the same as Mingjing. Xia Bai did not force this, but immediately handed the matter over to Hao Zhuang. Among other things, the leadership of the armed forces must be in the hands of his own people. But Hao Zhuang was a little too sincere, so Xia Bai specially taught him and gave him a lesson on how to be a good leader together with Yi Hanyu and Bailan. Hao Zhuang was quite excited about this. He had long wanted to experience the feeling of leading a group of people to fight zombies, especially after hearing that his team would become combatants on battleships in the future. So he took out the energy of 120,000 points. But the manpower of his team still needs to be selected. This matter is difficult to say, but it is also simple to say. Logically speaking, it is best to train from scratch, or select some honest and reliable people. Xia Bai and the others, there are more than 1,500 people in total. Leaving aside people like Ziyacheng, the old, the weak, and those who don't want to fight, there are still many optional personnel. But there is also knowledge in selecting manpower. People from Kyo Deming's group cannot be selected, and people from Ziyacheng's side are even less likely to be selected. Even people from Huang Qiulan's group must be avoided. The process of forming the team and selecting members took a lot of time. In the end, the team named Anyang Mountain Guard by Hao Zhuang had an initial number of about 60 people. This number is actually not that many, and there is room for expansion in the future. The first task of this Anyang Mountain Guard is to clear out the remaining zombies on Anyang Mountain. These zombies are small in number, but scattered in a large number. Xia Bai is too lazy to waste time here, so he leaves all these matters to Hao Zhuang and the others, which is just right. Let them take this opportunity to get used to it. In addition to this matter, there is farming. Although Xia Bai's battleships can produce a variety of materials, Xia Bai does not want to spend a lot of energy points to supply food with battleships. But he is crazy. The energy points he has will naturally be used for more important things. Moreover, their population will increase in the future. Even if they ask Xia Bai to supply it, they will not be able to afford it. It will only drag them to death. Being self-sufficient and farming your own land is the most important thing. Of course, if you want to really start planting things, you must at least wait until the Anyang Mountain area is completely safe. He asked Huang Qiulan to find a group of experienced people in farming to take this opportunity to farm in the future. It is worth mentioning that there is another expert among this group of experienced people. An agricultural professor named Lin Chenghua. Farming is not that simple. Xia Bai remembers clearly that this alien virus also affects plants. Most of the plants have died. Most of the original plant seeds on the earth are infected, and the newly planted ones are infected. The survival rate of things is not high either. Although the large-scale outbreak of infection has ended, the virus is still widely present in the air, but the concentration has dropped. In fact, people who were not infected in the first wave have the ability to be immune to airborne infections. But the virus still exists, and the probability of infection in newborns and newly sprouted plants is quite high. In the next 5 years, the population will become smaller and smaller, and there are also reasons for this. In his previous life, the military had to deal with farming matters, but in this life, although Xia Bai will not be protected by the military and enjoy the benefits, he also has his own methods. In the list of warships that can be manufactured, there is a type of high strength and durable seeds. 1 energy point, and 1 seed can have high antivirus capabilities and survivability. Moreover, he can also use battleships to manufacture cutting-edge air purification equipment and build sterile planting greenhouses. Lin Chenghua has experience in this area and has given Xia Bai a lot of suggestions. Xia Bai's battleship can produce all kinds of black technologies, some of which are not even found on the Earth, and can fully support Lin Chenghua's suggestions. All these things must be prepared, and Xia Bai remembers clearly that there is a large military air raid shelter on Anyang Mountain, and there are many things in it. Ordinary people do not know its location, but Xia Bai, who came from the previous life, even lived there. Once you pass there, you will of course know the location of the air raid shelter. The air raid shelter is located in the corner of the east side of Anyang Mountain. It is extremely hidden, and has a military level screening system and security measures outside. Xia Bai's battleship has reached level 4, and has the ability to crack this system. Xia Bai remembered that in the previous life, the military opened this place to survivors, but in this life, Xia Bai did not want to do that. The size of battleships will become larger and larger, and it is time to build a shipyard. Alpha was able to crack the system, but before Xia Bai could open the air raid shelter, he heard a sudden system prompt. Dear Captain, there is an unknown unarmed aircraft approaching the realm you set. After the battleship reaches the 4th level, the detection range of the battleship's radar system can reach more than 10 kilometers, covering the entire Anyang Mountain for long-term uninterrupted. Warning point. Although the battleship had marked it as an unarmed aircraft, Xia Bai returned to the battleship immediately, putting aside the matter of the air raid shelter, intending to find out what it was first. Brothers, happy Mid-Autumn Festival. May everyone in the world be reunited today. Chapter 166 Airdrop. Soon, Xia Bai discovered that this was actually a false alarm. What came was a military transport plane, here to deliver the airdrop. True to their promise, the military sent material support to Xia Bai survivors. As soon as they started to build up. Most of the things sent by the military are various daily necessities and food, which are the most critical things in the apocalypse right now. In addition, there are also a small amount of medicines and firearms. It is worth mentioning that in addition to this, the military also sent down a set of military communication equipment, obviously hoping that Xia Bai could establish long-term and stable contact with Changbai Mountain. This kind of contact is undoubtedly more important to the military to be beneficial. This time the military's airdrop of supplies caused quite a commotion among the many survivors in Anyang Mountain. No one thought that Xia Bai was actually cooperating with the military. However, at this moment, many people also I can't help but think, is Xia Bai's battleship also related to the military? After all, only the military can produce such a thing, right? In this way, Xia Bai gained another layer of identity with a military background. However, this is actually a benefit for Xia Bai. After all, in the current apocalypse, the military has an unshakable identity and status in the hearts of survivors. Xia Bai is a member of the military, which invisibly makes the survivors even more vulnerable. The readers feel more at ease, and it is more difficult for anyone to have other thoughts. Xia Bai received the supplies, but was not in a hurry to contact the military. During this period, Xia Bai had to deal with too many things, so it would be a good thing to be temporarily isolated from Changbai Mountain. In short, I will accept your things first. As for the other things, we will wait and see. While Hao Zhuang and the others were clearing Anyang Mountain, Xia Bai led a convoy of semi-trailers in the shape of survivors to the Shengjing city area to search for a large amount of building materials needed to build the wall. Although warships can produce building materials, there are too many materials needed to build a wall around Anyang Mountain, so there is no need to waste energy. Points on this matter. In fact, if Xia Bai wants to find building materials, it is actually better to go to the loading points in the city, but those locations are not as good as here. It is difficult for the survivors and their semi-trailers to go deep, and they can only go to the buildings near the suburbs. Search for relevant materials at the construction site. However, they can also find a large number of related vehicles from the construction site to help transform Anyang Mountain. At the same time, other aspects of work are also going on. Hao Zhuang and others cleared the area around the zombie warning in Anyang Mountain, and those responsible for farming had to wait until all this was over before they could start the difficult road of farming. Under Huang Qiulin's organization, a thorough operation inside Anyang Mountain also began. The process of virus removal. Point of course, alien viruses are widely distributed in the air, and their virus cleaning is actually just cleaning up zombie corpses and erasing bloodstains. After discussing with Xia Bai and others, Huang Qiulan has now mobilized all the survivors, divided them into groups based on their work and strengths before the end of the world, and assigned tasks to every one point in these survivors. After seeing Xia Bai's force and realizing the guarantee of the military's cooperation with Xia Bai, they have truly realized the prospects of the Anyang Mountain survivor base under construction. They all behaved very positively. The air raid shelter located in Anyang Mountain has also been opened by Xia Bai directly with the help of Alpha. The facilities inside are quite complete and there is a certain amount of material reserves. However, it will take some time to transform it into a shipyard for warships. At this time, Xia Bai really started to contact the military, and he also really talked with Commander Li Jianbei. Xia Bai and the others renovated the observation station located behind Anyang Mountain, and established an information center using the equipment there, and the equipment provided by the military. With the technical support of Alpha and Battleship, it was not difficult to do this. Therefore, the first phone call between Xia Bai and Li Jianbei was a video call. This was not the first time that Xia Bai heard Li Jianbei's name, but this was indeed the first time that Xia Bai met the commander of the 37th Division. He is about 50 years old, his hair is already graying, and his face is full of traces of time. But his eyes are cold and his expression is serious. Standing in front of such a person, people can't help but become solemn. Xia Bai straightened his expression, and after the two briefly introduced themselves, they went straight to the topic. Mr. Li was rarely polite. He said directly, within 2 days at the latest, our specialists will arrive at Anyang Mountain where you are, and bring you the second batch of supplies. You can make requests to us. Whatever is needed, as long as it is not excessive, we will provide unconditional support. Of course, Xia Bai was not polite about this. He directly explained all the ammunition and various supplies he needed. He also asked about missile-related matters. The situation was just as Xia Bai had expected before. It was normal. Li Jianbei is willing to provide weapons, but for missiles, he will not agree. Li Jianbei said, although it is polite, I would like to remind Mr. Xia that our support is based on the premise that you are indeed establishing a survivor base and providing shelter for ordinary survivors. Once we find that you have any intention to, we will adopt a policy of no tolerance for unfair treatment, torture, and rape of women, and will stop all assistance to you and forcibly take over control of Anyang Mountain. He paused here for a moment and said, although that's what I said, I believe you are not that kind of person, let alone become that kind of person. Xia Bai smiled slightly and didn't say much. Li Jianbei continued, in addition, we will help you carry out propaganda in Liao province and Ji province through the military's channels to recruit survivors. There are also many survivor bases in Liao province, large and small. For those who are suitable, we will ask them to gather with you. Xia Bai nodded and said, we will also conduct searches and broadcasts in this area. Don't worry, I will do a good job. If I can expand in the Shengjing area, it will be good for the military and me. Li Jianbei also nodded and said, although you are nominally establishing a survivor base in Xia with our support and instruction, I still want to thank you. What you are doing is sharing pressure and risks for the 3 eastern provinces and the entire human race. Xia Bai said, it's nothing. I also understand the principle that, if there is no skin left, the hair will be attached. If everyone is dead, it will be of no benefit to anyone. I also understand that the military situation is not as good as imagined. Please, give me some support, collections, recommendation votes, etc. I noticed that some people say that the protagonist arranges for people from other departments to build his own team. Let me explain it here. That is not naive. The survivor base has just been established, and the weapons are limited. The manpower is even more limited, and the manpower is 7. Most of the puzzles are based on the strength of the protagonist. I have also written that the Anyang Mountain Guard does not have many people in total. It is the prototype of the real defense force in the future. Of course, it must focus on stability. Now it must be the sole authority to establish the prototype of the survivor base first, and then other decentralization. This is not naive or taken for granted. This is a way to quickly establish the survivor base in the early stage. Chapter 167 It's all the fault of intelligent zombies. Chapter 168 It's all the fault of intelligent zombies. In the eyes of many survivors, the military did not appear as powerful as expected. This is actually normal. The infection rate of the virus is as high as 70%, and the outbreak occurs late at night. The infection rate of soldiers may not be that high due to physical reasons, but it does not mean that they can avoid infection. At least 7 out of 10 ordinary people may be infected. Among soldiers, only 3 out of 10 may be infected. However, at that point in time, even if there was only one infected person in a barracks, it would be very dangerous, and it might even affect everyone in the entire barracks. Moreover, contemporary soldiers are not in the era of putting guns next to their beds. Casualties. It is self-evident that a small army garrison is fine, but the larger the place, the more serious the chaos may be. The chaos that zombies can bring in the early stages is closely related to the local population. Therefore, in the early days of the end of the world, the number of troops has been reduced sharply, and due to the paralysis of the command system, there will undoubtedly be a large number of casualties in the transitional period of the early days of the end of the world. By the time the military gathers together, there will already be a large number of attrition. The pressure from the military comes from all aspects. They have to establish settlements, gather survivors, solve various problems such as food, clothing, housing and transportation. They also have to fight against zombies externally. Xia Bai also understood from Yang Qingzi last time. In addition to dealing with ordinary zombies and intelligent zombies, the military also has to deal with creatures spawned by other mutant viruses that ordinary people cannot see. Moreover, fighting against zombies is not as simple as clearing the ground. The operation of give me a few people and the ability to bomb from the air and I can kill all the zombies in a city in minutes is basically unfeasible in reality. Most people in this world are sarcastic people. When they see a scratch, they feel they have seen the whole picture. If it weren't for the excessive pressure from the military, the survivors wouldn't have been asked to open a base outside. Echoing the Changbei Mountain survivor base. Li Jianbei glanced at Xia Bai. He didn't say much about this topic. He just said, I heard that you rescued a group of survivors in Yuanping City before. Xia Bai nodded and said, the 1,000 or so people on my side are all survivors rescued from Yuanping City. Li Jianbei nodded slightly, smiled, and said, that, aircraft of yours has changed a lot from what it used to be. Xia Bai smiled and said, probably. Li Jianbei glanced at Xia Bai and said, this is your business, and I don't know how to ask more questions. But there is one thing I want to ask you clearly, which is the thing you gave to Yang Qingzi before. That sincerity. Do you know what that is? That's the ultimate virus suppressing drug. Of course Xia Bai knew it, and he did not hide it, but said directly, it can suppress the zombie virus in a short period of time. Li Jianbei nodded and said, but it can't completely eradicate this virus. What I want to ask is, where did you get this thing from? Have you been able to completely eradicate this zombie virus thing? Xia Bai was silent for a moment and said, smart zombies. Li Jianbei frowned and said, smart zombies. Xia Bai said, I discovered it by accident. It is a laboratory of intelligent zombies. They are developing some kind of virus weapon. This inhibitory drug seems to be a byproduct of their creation. Xia Bai was talking nonsense about the source of the extreme virus suppression potion. Although Luo Yi gave him a round of nonsense, Xia Bai would not say that the potion was produced from the battleship. Others can know the existence of the battleship and its external firepower, but Xia Bai has no intention of telling her what is going on inside, what functions and capabilities it has. In fact, except for Bailan and others, even Bailan and others know about the things in the battleship. Yi Hanai only knew a little bit about it. However, what Xia Bai said was not all nonsense. Smart zombie laboratories do exist, and they are also developing weapons. In the previous life, this happened before. Smart zombies refined high concentration viruses to create chemical bombs among survivors. The detonation in the base directly caused a secondary virus infection and directly disintegrated a survivor base from the inside. He just took this opportunity to remind the military of the existence of this zombie laboratory. In the past, the Earth was almost completely controlled by the government and the military, but now, the old social system has collapsed. Zombies are everywhere in the current era. Cities and everything in the cities have been occupied by zombies. The old social system has collapsed. The monitoring system and investigation system also lost their function with the destruction of relevant facilities in various cities. Smart zombies are hiding in the zombie piles in the corners to do something. Before the moment they really work, even the military. I don't know either. Xia Bai frowned slightly when he heard this. In his opinion, what Xia Bai said was not impossible. Intelligent zombies develop and grow at an incredibly fast rate. However, he still maintained a skeptical attitude and asked Xia Bai. Bai simply asked for specific information. After that, Xia Bai exhaled slightly and said, as soon as you have any related items about serum that can resist this virus, you also hope to notify us immediately. Xia Bai nodded and said, you can rest assured that my vision is the same as yours. As long as there is a way to completely eliminate the danger of zombies, I will definitely implement it as soon as possible. Xia Bai nodded and said, I want to believe you. There is another thing. Yang Chengzi may have told you that there are a large number of mutant infections of the virus in coastal areas. It is best for you and your people not to go that way. Xia Bai nodded. He had also seen type 3 infected bodies, so naturally he would not join in the fun there. His level 4 battleships might be able to fight against a small number of these infected bodies, but right now his survivor base is in ruins. Yes, he can hunt zombies in the Shengjing area, but he still can't leave too far for the time being. He just said, if the situation is too bad, use nuclear weapons in advance. This was the last resort adopted by the military in the previous life. Xia Bai knew that it would be of little use if he said it now. It was unlikely that the military would just listen to his opinion, but he could only guarantee that he had said it. Xia Bai shook his head as expected and said, don't worry, leave the situation over there to us. I will send a special list to guard this communication line. If you need anything, you can contact us immediately, or if there is any danger, you can contact us immediately. We can contact us as soon as possible. Provide air support during the period. Chapter 168 On the Right Track. Chapter 169 Getting on the right track. After finishing the call with Xia Bai, Xia Bai exhaled slightly. He sat back on an office chair at the back, rubbed his temples, turned to the person next to him, and said, tell Commander Luo, Anyang. There is no need for them to go to the mountain. We have already made contact, and asked them to abide by the original order and watch their own defense lines. The clerk soldier beside him nodded slightly. Aren't you going back to the combat center, Xia Bai shook his head. I'm going to take a rest in a moment. Isn't there anything new over there? Has the source of the abnormal signal in the direction of Bingcheng been found? The soldier shook his head slightly and said, there is no progress in Ice City, but the news from the command center just now is that I hope you can return to the command center as soon as the things here are over and participate in establishing countermeasures against the latest situation. According to the news just sent back from there, the thing in the Pacific is still moving in our direction. The latest analysis results show that it may land anywhere along the coast of the Bohai Sea, but the current fighting situation in Bingcheng area, the most intense, bloody, and large-scale shelling, may be the key factors to attract the monster. Xia Bai rubbed his temples, looking a little tired, and said, what does that mean? Xia Bai glanced at the soldier and realized that he was forcing someone to make things difficult for him. He smiled kindly and said, it's nothing. I know it myself. It's just a few plans. Nuclear strike, temporary ceasefire, early interception, that none of them are good plans, and there is no point in me going there. Whoever makes the decision and has the consequences will not be able to bear it. The soldier didn't expect Xia Bai to talk to him so much and seemed a little at a loss and didn't know what to say. Xia Bai didn't care. He smiled. Anyway, if the sky falls, there will be someone tall to support it. You can turn around and call Lao Chu over. You should be involved on my behalf. Anyway, I'm a division commander and cannot really play any role in decision making. Effect. The situation is very chaotic now. Let Lao Chu be careful when he speaks. The factions must be clearly distinguished. Don't think and say whatever you want all the time like before the end of the world. The soldier nodded. Okay, I'll go right away. Wait. Before the other party could take action, Li Jianbei interrupted him again. Wait a minute, we can leave other things alone, but there is one thing, the suspected source of infection mentioned by the Scientific Research Center. We must take it. Come on, no matter what the cost, regardless of camp. If Lao Chu doesn't understand, just tell him, we are fighting against the Scientific Research Center in the faction fight, but science is science. What we are fighting is people, not science. If it is really like the Scientific Research Center as you said, that thing may be able to solve the mystery of the zombie virus. No matter who it offends, we must insist on bringing it back. When Li Jianbei mentioned this level, he paused slightly, glanced at the soldier again, and waved his hand to signal him to leave. He just sat in the corner here, pressing his temples, frowning and closing his eyes. It was obvious that almost everyone was doing what they should do, but the situation did not become clearer and clearer. This is probably because human beings are so complex. At the same time, in Anyang Mountain near Shengjing City, Lao Province. Xia Bai, who had just ended the call, was not that distressed. His survivor base has only just begun to be established, and its internal composition is not as complicated as that of the military. Therefore, the situation inside the base is now clear at a glance. The internal organization of the Changbei Mountain survivor base comes from both the pre-apocalyptic system and the post-apocalyptic system. The situation is indeed chaotic, but Xia Bai's place is a purely post-apocalyptic system. Yesterday, with the efforts of Hao Zhuang and the others, almost all the zombies on Anyang Mountain were wiped out. The time when the apocalypse broke out was just after the National Day. The tourist wave on Anyang Mountain had just passed, and it was late at night. There were no people on the mountain, and their work was not that difficult. After the zombies were cleaned up, and the bodies were successfully disposed of, the farming and wall projects officially began. After all, in the presence of zombies, people are likely to be accidentally infected when performing these tasks, which will lead to greater trouble. What Xia Bai lacks most right now is people. He doesn't want to let some unlucky guy get bitten and infect 5 or 6 people due to negligence. Most of the people who can survive to this day in the apocalypse are still in good health. After these 2 days of emergency training, the number of people who can participate in the construction of the wall has reached as many as 500 or 600. Of course, the vast majority of them. I have never done this kind of work. On February 27th, these people, led by several China Construction Bureau or engineering experts, began the massive wall construction work. These people were very active. Everyone knew that building such a wall would intercept zombies and save their lives. The first phase of wall construction is planned to be 3 meters high. Although there are many people involved in the construction, the boundary of Anyang Mountain is quite large, so it is definitely a big project. Moreover, Xia Bai and the others have just taken root here. This mountainous area is still a long way from the city. It is unlikely that a large number of zombies will come over in a short time. Therefore, the first phase of the wall construction plan they formulated is 3 meters high, and it is enough to be able to withstand a small number of spiritual zombies, mainly to surround the entire Anyang Mountain, but also to leave room for increasing height in the future. At the same time, the wall has left a portal position into opposite directions. The front door is facing the direction of Shengjing City, which facilitates them to transport a large amount of materials in from Anyang Mountain, while the rear door is close to the air raid shelter. As a route of retreat in crisis situations, the survivor base began to be established, and the entire Anyang Mountain was in full swing. In terms of farming, Lin Chenghua started his own plan with some survivors, who were experienced farmers. Xia Bai attached great importance to this aspect even above the fence, and promised Lin Chenghua that, as long as it was what Lin Chenghua wanted, Xia Bai will get him anything useful at all costs in any era. Eating is the most important part of human life. If the apocalyptic survivor base cannot achieve self-sufficiency, there is no point in building high walls. Xia Bai is currently a being that everyone in Anyang Mountain is afraid of. His support is very useful to Lin Chenghua. He directly guarantees Xia Bai that he will do a good job here. This book will be on the shelves on October 1. There will be updates soon after it is released. Brothers must support the genuine version then. Chapter 169 The Hunting Begins. Chapter 170 The Hunt Begins. Xia Bai is also aware of his recent image. In the minds of ordinary survivors in Anyang Mountain, he is completely unsmiling and ruthless. This is of course due to Xia Bai's massacre-like behavior against zombies, and he rarely speaks publicly among ordinary survivors, only driving battleships to crush them everywhere. Point among the ordinary survivors, Xia Bai, who had great strength and was the actual leader of the entire Anyang Mountain survivor base, was naturally labeled as a strongman and became very close to strangers, but Xia Bai doesn't think there's anything wrong with this. He has such an image. As long as he controls it properly, he can hold the entire survivor base in his hands and ensure that he can enforce his orders and prohibitions. Xia Bai had already thought about Baolan's words before. Now that the battleship has reached level 4 and the survivor base has begun to be created, Xia Bai can no longer be as petty as an ordinary convoy leader. His behavior, the style, also needs to change. Point in the past, he, Baolan and the others, and even Yi Hanyu and the others, had gotten along as friends and fellow travelers, but now, facing this group of survivors he had gathered, the identity he wanted to maintain was that of a leader. Xia Bai himself does not need too many abilities, he only needs to use good people and battleships. Of course, he also needs to ensure his position in the survivor base at all times. Therefore, at this moment, he just smiled at Lin Qinghua and gave a few simple words of encouragement, but did not say anything further. Lin Qinghua became extremely motivated and must seize the opportunity to plant something. Point of course, this is actually something that cannot be rushed. Everything has a growth cycle. There are still only a few things that can be grown today and eaten tomorrow. Moreover, in the current apocalypse, safety inspections of crops have become more important. Alien viruses are spreading and spreading in the air. The concentration in the open space has already dropped, and normal people's immune systems can be immune. However, the new seedlings are at great risk of being infected. Some are found early, but some are not. Yes, once it is eaten by a living person, it will be infected. Therefore, if food safety is not done well, then it is not farming, but farming zombies. After wandering here for a while, Xia Bai turned around and returned to the battleship. His first combat drone was built. This is a Type I swarm drone. From the appearance, although the size parameters are similar to the Black Hawk 13, when it is actually manufactured, it always gives people the feeling that it is larger, and it is also more streamlined. It is also painted in black and looks more sharp from the appearance. Under it, there is a missile bay that can load small and medium-sized missiles. The full load is 2 rounds, which can be launched once. At the same time, it also has infrared equipment, radar systems, and anti-stealth capabilities. This Type I swarm drone can also be used as a suicide weapon, and can be loaded with explosives to launch a surprise attack on a target. However, the performance of this thing is actually very mediocre, but the price is not low. The key advantage is that it can be connected to Alpha's intelligence system and is completely controlled by Alpha to complete the attack on the target. According to Xia Bai's plan, he just made 10 units for Alpha to operate. After all, Xia Bai's main opponent now is actually zombies. There is not much difference between creating a drone swarm to bomb zombies and driving a battleship to bomb zombies. Instead of mass producing low-end drones at level 4, in Xia Bai's opinion, it doesn't make much sense. It's better to wait until the battleship reaches level 5 or even level 6 to prepare for the future against alien creatures. Of course, in the future, it is still unclear whether the armament of such drone combat groups can pose a threat to alien creatures. Therefore, Xia Bai only plans to get 10 of them for Alpha to patrol around Anyang Mountain and exist as an aerial realm force. However, even though Xia Bai had said that he would build 10 drones, Xia Bai now almost didn't have the energy points to build another drone. Xia Bai has been in Anyang Mountain for a long time, but he has spent quite a lot of energy points on it. He didn't invest much in the survivor base itself. At most, he provided certain infrastructure, generators, and seeds. It cost a lot of energy points, to manufacture the sensors installed on the walls. In addition, most of Xia Bai's energy points were used to build various weapons and weapons. Xia Bai proudly produced 10 of these individual gravity field grenades. On the other hand, he also made some modifications to the air raid shelter behind Anyang Mountain, installed various security and defense measures, invaded and modified the original military system, and spent energy points everywhere. But Xia Bai hardly hunted zombies these days, so it was normal to make ends meet. The survivor base has just been established, and it really needs the power of Xia Bai and his battleships. Nothing is free of effort. If Xia Bai wants the survivor base to be his helper in the future, he must make an investment now. There is no such thing as sitting back and enjoying the success. However, the situation at Anyang Mountain survivor base can be said to have basically stabilized. While promoting Huang Qiulan, Xia Bai also asked Ji Hanyu and Yang Xin to intervene, and even gave Qiao Deming a chance to check and balance each other. At the same time, it is under its own control point. Although from the current point of view, these people have no different intentions. This is now, and no one is sure what will happen to them in the future. Xia Bai does not want his survivor base to become another Changbei Mountain point among the survivors. Huang Qiulan has a greater influence. Xia Bai will not let her touch anything related to armed and military affairs. Huang Qiulan also understands Xia Bai's scruples. She is even more aware of her age. Only by being attached to a strong person like Xia Bai can they have room to move and develop. They have a tacit understanding with Xia Bai and just do their own things honestly. Although there are still many problems that need to be solved urgently in the Anyang Mountain survivor base, Xia Bai is finally able to free up his hands to earn energy points with the battleship moving from level 3 to level 4 and the completion of the survivor base. Xia Bai's way of hunting zombies also completely changed. This time, he drove the battleship directly into Shengjing City, in the direction away from Anyang Mountain. He played music directly from the battleship. The battleship even opened fire arrogantly across the line, directly hunting zombies all over the city. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Unscrupulous. Chapter 171 Unscrupulous. This time, Xia Bai was extremely arrogant. He drove the warship from the Anyang Mountain area at full speed and directly arrived at the sky above Shengjing City. He began to release small apples unscrupulously in the sky while lowering the flying height of the warship. And with the arrival of the battleship and this kind of music played completely at the maximum volume, it has an unimaginable huge drainage ability for zombies. Xia Bai was a little cautious at first. After all, it was the first time he was so arrogant, just surrounding the city. The scattered zombies wandering around the periphery were like wild cats that smelled the fishy smell, making terrifying roars, and rushing towards the direction of the sound, as if they were fighting for their lives. As the capital city of Liao province, Shengjing City has a huge population base, and the number of zombies after the apocalypse is expected to be even larger. You must know that the transformation rate of zombies caused by alien viruses is about 70% in humans. In such big cities, the probability of being infected by zombies is also higher, and the number of zombies will definitely increase. More than 70%. Even after various baptisms and killings by the military and survivors, the number of zombies in Shengjing City is still extremely large. Xia Bai's battleship stopped at a certain location for a while, and zombies gathered on the street and formed a tide, overwhelmingly pouring in this direction. Xia Bai opened fire without hesitation. The battleship opened fire at full speed and captured energy points with high speed and efficiency. And soon, Xia Bai confirmed that after the battleship reached level 4, it would be difficult for a zombie tide of this size to pose any threat to them. There are not many zombies to deal with in the periphery, and the energy points collected within a certain period of time are also very limited. Xia Bai was ready to visit the city. However, he was not in a hurry. Instead, he simply tested his battleship's enhanced ability to absorb energy points. He tested this by raising it vertically. After several tests, what is certain is that the current absorption range of the battleship is probably a spherical area with a diameter of 1 kilometer. Compared to a 20-meter long battleship, this absorption range is definitely far beyond the standard point. If he continues to expand in this way, by the time he reaches the 5th level battleship, he may be able to fully unleash his firepower in the sky and absorb the energy points of less than half of the city point. The expansion of the battleship's absorption range also means that Xia Bai can fully utilize the advantages of the battleship. He can stay high in the sky, attack zombies on the ground with absolute air superiority, and at the same time, collect energy without any hindrance. In addition to this, he briefly tested some other functions of the battleship, and then directly turned the battleship, quickly passed and flew from high altitude, and went straight into the depths of Shengjing City Point. With the previous test, Xia Bai felt confident, and became completely arrogant. While singing loudly and unscrupulously through the battleship, he opened fire fiercely on the battleship. When he encountered scattered zombies, he used the battleship's machine gun to shoot at them. If they were piled up, he would bombard them with heavy artillery. With one shot, he could clear a large open space. Some of them were gathered in specific locations, such as gas stations, and he would directly blast the entire gas station. The battleship, holding its shield, walked coldly through the explosion and flames when encountering some powerful extreme mutants. They were like kittens and puppies in front of Xia Bai's battleship. A grotesque extreme mutant rushed from one side. Xia Bai shot it down, and half of its body was blown away. This extreme mutant was so scared that it immediately stretched out a pair of similar with organs, like enlarged chicken wings, dragging its crippled body and pulling its long neck. It struggled to escape into the sky. But unfortunately, this thing couldn't fly very far at all, and was completely beaten into a giant fried chicken from the air by Xia Bai's subsequent shot. Extreme mutants are different from zombies. They are more like beasts. Although they are also extremely hungry for flesh and blood, they will actively avoid danger. Of course, before Xia Bai's 4th level battleship, they didn't even have any room to run. Xia Bai walked through the city unscrupulously and strangled zombies. However, he soon realized the true terror of the dense swarms of zombies in such a large-scale city. It was at dusk that day, the sun was setting, and the sky seemed to be on fire. At that time, Xia Bai's battleship was leaning against a building to kill the zombies below. At this moment, Li Jingyang took the lead in discovering the abnormality by launching a patrol drone. In the other direction where they were, a huge wave of corpses was rolling towards them. It was an incredible scene. Xia Bai had never seen such a scene. From a distance, it looks like a flood pouring down from the sky. The dense zombies form a real giant wave. They form a moving mountain of corpses with an upward height as high as 3 or 4 stories. High dense congestion in the city streets, stacked on top of each other and squeezed. Almost no one standing, stacked on top of each other, but pushed from the other end of the street at an unimaginably terrifying speed. In his previous life, Xia Bai had never seen such a scene. If he had seen it, he would have died long ago. This is a tide of corpses that is enough to overwhelm everything. But Xia Bai was now in control of the battleship. Facing such a zombie tide, he turned the battleship around and faced the zombie tide head on. He even lowered his altitude slightly and blocked the corpse wall head on. The naval guns and machine guns roared at the same time, and the powerful firepower blocked the group of zombies. The energy points in Xia Bai's battleship soared upwards like rockets at this moment. The strength of Xia Bai's battleship is enough to move sideways in the entire Shengjing city. This huge city of Shengjing is a huge training ground for Xia Bai, and this city, the dense zombies among them are endless energy points for him. Of course, he must also be cautious and not lead zombies to the survivor base. At present, the armed forces on Anyang Mountain cannot withstand a large-scale zombie tide. Xia Bai's battleship is quite powerful in hunting zombies, but with the size of his current battleship, it is almost impossible to ensure the overall safety of Anyang Mountain under the impact of a large-scale zombie wave. All in all, as they took a firm stand, with Anyang Mountain as the backing, and Shengjing City as the leveling ground, Xia Bai truly no longer had any worries. In a sense, the first rapid growth period. This book will be on the shelves on October 1st. I hope everyone can come and support it. Chapter 171 Rescue. Chapter 172 Rescue March 21, 2019. The inner city area of Shengjing City. Xia Bai's battleship was passing between tall buildings in the dilapidated city. His Cold War ships shuttled coldly among the ruins, like a crushing god. In the dilapidated building with dozens of floors, densely packed zombies looked for the sound of the battleship and jumped out of the tall building without fear of death. However, the distance between the battleship and the nearest building was only 10 meters. Even with the zombies' control, even with the ability to jump, it was difficult to get close to the battleship, and it fell densely from the building like a flood. The automatic cannons on both sides of the battleship were firing fiercely, shooting back and forth among the zombies, and the battleship's energy points were rising like a rocket. Below the battleship, on the ground, zombies came like a tide, crowding the entire street. Like Kung Fu chasing the sun, frantically chasing the battleship in the sky. For this group of zombies, Xia Bai only occasionally dropped a white phosphorus bomb, which often achieved miraculous effects in such a dense tide of zombies, but it might cause a fire in the city. This weapon must be used with caution, but because the battleship has to continue moving forward, there are not many energy points collected from these zombies. Xia Bai has something to do while walking through the city right now. Behind the battleship, Li Jinggyang said, the trapped survivors have been located. They are on the 49th floor of a commercial building in front. There are a large number of zombies gathered outside. Earlier today, Xia Bai came to Shengjing City. Based on the experience accumulated in these days, he became more skilled in hunting zombies on a large scale in Shengjing City. At this time, he received a message from a distress signal in the city. Over the past few days, while Xia Bai was traveling through the city with battleships hunting zombies, he was also gathering survivors in the city. It has been half a year since the end of the world, but in big cities like Shengjing City, there are still many scattered survivors who are trapped and dead in the city for various reasons, surviving among zombies and living their daily lives a precarious life. As the world enters the apocalypse, the city becomes quieter and quieter, and the zombies become more and more scattered. It becomes more and more difficult for these trapped survivors to escape from the city on their own. And being trapped in a doomsday city, even if you have survival experience, death is only a matter of time. Therefore, for such people, Xia Bai is their life-saving straw. Xia Bai also needs these survivors to expand his survivor base. These days, due to the joint propaganda of the military, many survivors in Shengjing are gathering towards Anyang Mountain. Now their number has exceeded 2,300. Yesterday, Xia Bai also received a message from Shengjing. There is information from a group of survivors in another county. There are more than 400 people on the other side and they want to gather together. The group of survivors that Xia Bai wants to rescue now are obviously desperate, knowing that they will die if they are trapped in the city any longer. Therefore, when Black Hawk 13 was circling in the area over there today, it seemed that afraid that he would not be discovered, he set fire to the roof of the building he was in. The flames shot into the sky and the smoke billowed. It was difficult for Xia Bai not to notice. Therefore, Xia Bai temporarily put aside the situation here, turned the battleship, and swept away in that direction. When he came here, the upper floors of the building were full of fire, and thick smoke filled the building. Black smoke rushed out from every window, and there were a large number of zombies inside. A dangerous building in the apocalypse. Li Jinggyang was a little stunned when he saw this scene. Aren't these people too crazy? If you ask for help, you don't have to cause such a big fire, right? Xia Bai knew why. This group of survivors is trapped in a building. There are zombies inside and outside the building. They are in a desperate situation. They can't survive for long. If they can't get help in time, they will die anyway, so they just click on the building to make sure. His distress signal must be seen by Xia Bai. This is the most normal mentality for survivors trapped and dead in the city. The risks involved in surviving in this kind of city are too great. Within half a year, even if people don't die, their psychology is about to be crushed. However, half of the building was now in flames and thick smoke, making it difficult to find the location of the survivors. Xia Bai is also not good at using freezing weapons. This thing is likely to freeze the survivors to death inside. However, the battleship can locate the survivors inside through the life detection radar. There may be some distortion due to the flames, but it is still easy to judge when the survivors are gathered together. As long as this group of people do not run around for Xia Bai and him for the battleship, rescuing them is almost just a matter of time. Xia Bai directly announced to the whole building with his battleship, asking the survivors in the building to stay in their original positions as much as possible. His battleship would be arriving soon. Immediately afterwards, he lowered his height slightly and crashed into the building from the lower floor with the main body of the battleship. The structure of the building was like paper when it was hit by Xia Bai's battleship. Xia Bai was holding up the shield of the battleship. The disintegrated structure could not cause any damage to his battleship. He directly crushed through this layer. The zombies in the battleship, the floors under the battleship, were broken layer by layer. Xia Bai controlled the battleship to climb upwards, slowly crashing through it layer by layer, and continuing to climb upwards amid the billowing smoke. Xia Bai's battleship sailed upstream, like an arrow from the sky, directly arriving at the floor, where the survivors were located. There were about 5 or 6 survivors in that group, huddled together in a corner, with quite a few zombies even swaying around them. At this time, Xia Bai's battleship broke through the wall. Under Alpha's operation, the automatic cannon fired accurately, directly clearing the zombies behind. However, the ground on this floor was layered due to the impact of Xia Bai's battleship. The survivors screamed and were about to fall from here. And at this moment, a ray of light penetrated the dark floors and smoke, accurately covering the bodies of the screaming survivors, and then pulled them one by one into the battleship. These survivors were in panic. They didn't even realize what was going on when they arrived at the battleship. They looked stunned and frightened. However, Xia Bai's battleship had already changed its direction, crashed through the walls, accelerated suddenly, and in an instant, rushed out of the burning and gradually collapsing building, and rose directly into the billowing smoke. It went up to the sky, then accelerated. Amidst the hum of the anti-gravity engine, it accelerated in an instant, and disappeared into the distance in an instant. Chapter 172 The Legendary Protagonist. Chapter 173 The Legendary Protagonist. From the moment he boarded the battleship, Jing Xiangyang felt as if he was in a dream. He has been trapped in Shengjing City for more than half a year. In the city at the end of the world, human beings who originally existed as rulers have become rats crossing the street, escaping in panic everywhere in the city, and their living conditions are getting worse and worse. Just a few days ago, Jing Xiangyang reached a dead-end. He and several survivors who were living together were trapped in a building. The place was full of zombies. They had no way to escape. They had no way to escape from the building, and had no choice but to go all the way up. The zombies were also chasing them all the way up. Although they have set up various obstacles on each floor, as time goes by and the longer they stay here, the more surrounding zombies they attract, and it is only a matter of time before they are killed. Jing Xiangyang and the others were too small, with only 6 people. It was impossible and unrealistic to rush out, let alone jump from a tall building. It seemed as if they were just waiting to die. Jing Xiangyang didn't want to die. He is only 16 years old, and has spent most of his time in school. He has never experienced life, and has never even had a girlfriend. Jing Xiangyang was unwilling to give in, but he could only wait for death like that. Until about a few days ago, they heard the loud sound of some kind of explosion coming from the far side of the city, and as time passed, the sound of the explosion got closer to them every day. Jing Xiangyang didn't know that it was actually Xia Bai's battleship sweeping away the zombies. He thought it was the military coming. The few of them who were trapped here were overjoyed and quietly waited for the opportunity. Finally, they were here. On that day, they saw the drone hovering in the sky, and they decisively set fire to the building where they were located and sent out a distress signal. What Jing Xiangyang thought at that time was that if he couldn't wait for the military's rescue, he would simply jump off the building. He had had enough of this kind of life, and if he really couldn't survive, he would just die. However, God seemed to be taking care of him, and the rescue came, picking them all up in a weird spaceship in a way that Jing Xiangyang could not imagine. There was no imaginary military force, nor the People's Liberation Army soldiers who had to break through layers of zombie blockades to complete the rescue. There was only one domineering spaceship. Jing Xiangyang didn't even know how he got on the spacecraft. He was very stunned, as if he was in a dream. He didn't see anything clearly, but first he saw a very beautiful person. Using beauty To describe the person in front of me is actually not appropriate. The other party is dressed very neatly, with a serious and cold look on her face. There is no makeup on her face, but her facial features are naturally delicate, and combined with her seemingly natural cold temperament, it makes people feel good looking, but they dare not look at it too much. Take a second look. Jing Xiang didn't dare to look at it for a second time. He lowered his head indifferently. His already dizzy head became even dizzy. He didn't hear clearly what everyone was saying. He was just confused for a while, and seemed to be somewhere, and then followed the others all the way off the spacecraft. He came to a survivor base. When Jing Xiang realized this, he felt happy from the bottom of his heart for a person like him, who has been hunting for zombies since the beginning of the apocalypse. The survivor base means safety and shelter. Here he can have a good sleep without worrying about zombies. Bitten to death in his sleep. The survivor base is like paradise for people like Jing Xiang. Jing Xiang took a deep breath. He noticed the wall about 3 meters high in the distance and a group of people approaching. Finally, he saw the woman he saw before chatting with a man. Compared with that good-looking woman, that man seemed a bit ordinary, but in front of that ordinary man, that woman was talking and laughing like a melting iceberg, revealing a bit of heart-stirring charm. Jing Xiang looked a little dumbfounded until a voice sounded next to him. Welcome to the Anyang Mountain Survivor Base. We are a survivor base with free armed forces built with the support of the military. Here, you will have absolute security, food supply and sanitary conditions. I'm Cairo Deming, everyone. Leaders and awakened ones, you follow me. Cairo Deming led a welcome team over Jing Xiang, and the others were a little shocked when they heard that Cairo Deming was an awakened person and what Cairo Deming said. Such a non-military survivor base actually uses the awakened as its leader. Is this because the awakened one has no place to use it? In fact, this was Cairo Deming's own request. After arriving at the Anyang Mountain Survivor Base, Cairo Deming has actually been unable to find his own position. Huang Qiulan is better than him in gathering survivors, and Huang Qiulan's forces are also deliberately wary of his presence among the survivors in Yuanping City. Xia Bai's battleship has no need for Cairo Deming. Except that Cairo Deming can help a lot with certain physical tasks. Cairo Deming really doesn't have anything to do during normal times, although Xia Bai said that he would ask Cairo Deming to join the construction of a new security team in the future. Judging from the current situation, this is unreasonable. Although Cairo Deming has no intention of becoming an apocalyptic overlord, he is still an awakener, and was a well-known figure in Yuanping City before. In fact, Cairo Deming also understood that Xia Bai did not believe in him, but at the same time, Xia Bai also wanted to use himself to contain Huang Qiulan's influence. In Cairo Deming's view, this was his opportunity. Therefore, he took the initiative to take the position of welcoming guests and introducing survivors to the base. He asked for nothing else, but to be famous among ordinary survivors today was of course the same as usual. After Cairo Deming said hello to Xia Bai, he led the group of disgraced survivors to Anyang Mountain. He led and introduced that as an awakened person. He was very polite to these ordinary survivors. Cairo Deming is a smart man. He knows that in a survivor base like Xia Bai, with that terrifying battleship, the difference between ordinary people and awakened people is not that big, and the status of awakened people is not that high. Although Xia Bai himself attaches great importance to survivor, but he will never allow the awakened to become a superior group of people. Therefore, Cairo Deming would never do anything inappropriate, and he himself was not a bully. Instead, he won a good reputation among the survivors of Anyang Mountain. But sometimes, Cairo Deming was inevitably a little depressed when they were in Ice City before. He and Xia Bai were evenly matched and feared and threatened each other. Why was he so much worse than others now? Could this be the protagonist in the legend? Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. This book will be on the shelves on October 1. Chapter 173Y. Chapter 174Y. Although it was said that Cairo Deming led the team to greet the new survivors, it was Zukayo Kilo who actually gave the explanation. This girl was pure and sweet, and she spoke well, and she was able to calm the minds of the survivors who had just arrived. These days, Great changes have already taken place in Anyang Mountain Point. Most of the outer wall has been built and is expected to be basically completed before May. The replanning of the top of Anyang Mountain is also going very smoothly. Several new areas have been divided into layers based on the original buildings. The residential area occupies a large area of the original Anyang Mountain Resort Villa Point, and Xia Bai even opened a canteen here and planned to hold some large-scale gala parties on certain festivals. Of course, this is still Xia Bai's old concept. The end of the world is the end of the world, but life must be lived. There are no conditions. It doesn't matter when you are young, but living is not a shackles. And life is not just about living. Point. The direction of the air raid shelter is classified as the military zone of Anyang Mountain. Ordinary survivors are not allowed to enter. It is the dock of Xia Bai battleship. At the same time, he stores 1/3 of the food of the entire survivor base here. Not used, only used in emergencies. The meteorological observatory and related facilities behind Anyang Mountain have also been used. Although its original function has been scrapped, Xia Bai found a group of people and planned to transform it into the future land command center of Anyang Mountain. But the progress of the project was far slower than Xia Bai imagined. The relevant technical personnel were not available, and the transformation was difficult to plan. Point. On the other side of Anyang Mountain, Lin Chenghe was working in full swing. The greenhouses were all built. There were many things that Xia Bai didn't understand at all, but they were also in good order. Lin Chenghe swore that within 3 months, they can grow things in their fields. All in all, the entire Anyang Mountain survivor base is currently in a thriving state. Zukaokyo only gave the simplest introduction to Jingxiang and the others, and they were as excited and surprised as a group of bumpkins from the countryside. This kind of facilities and conditions may be nothing before the apocalypse, but for people like Jingxiang and others who have been wandering around in the apocalypse for who knows how long, this kind of survivor base is simply a paradise in the apocalypse. When Xia Bai and the others rescued people, they notified Anyang Mountain. Therefore, Jingxiang's rooms were assigned early. Kyo Deming took them to register and led them here. The task is completed and you can leave. Point. But at this moment, Jingxiang quietly came up to Kyo Deming and sneakily handed over a packet of Chinese. Kyo Deming glanced at this guy and said, "Looking at you, you are not yet an adult. Are you doing this?" Having said that, Kyo Deming calmly stretched out his hand and put the other party's packet of Zhonghe into his pocket. There was no shortage of supplies on Anyang Mountain at the moment, and he didn't lack cigarettes either, but who would spare his own time? Little stuff. Zukaokyo, who was standing next to him, saw this scene in his eyes, curled his lips, stretched out his hand, and pinched Kyo Deming quietly. Kyo Deming pretended not to notice it at all, and started chatting with Jingxiang with a smile. Jingxiang had just arrived, so he still took care of what the boss asked for. Kyo Deming also likes this kind of sensible person. The two of them go back and forth, and they talk very passionately. Although Jingxiang is only 16 years old, he is very good at talking. He has survived for such a long time in the apocalypse, and he is also smart. Very clever, and after chatting with Kyo Deming for a long time, Kyo Deming really started to like this guy. At the end, Kyo Deming said, "Well, when my security team is established, you will come to work here. You are a high school student who knows nothing, so just follow me." Xiang nodded repeatedly and said, "Well, brother Kyo, I have one more thing I want to ask you about. That is, when I came here before, I saw a very beautiful beauty on that spaceship. She was, you talking about Bailan?" Kyo Deming immediately located what the scene was about. He smashed his mouth and said, "Don't think about her. That girl is staring at Xia Bai. Although she and Xia Bai doesn't even admit it, but even ghosts can see it." Xiang opened his mouth. Through Zukaokyo's introduction, he also knew that Xia Bai was the founder of the Anyang Mountain Survivor Base. The ordinary looking person who talked to Bailan before was Xia Bai. He couldn't help but think, why should such an ordinary guy do this? Is this the legendary flower that makes pigs bow? However, it was impossible for him to say such words. At that moment, he exchanged a few polite words with Kyo Deming, and went back directly. When Jing Xiangyang walked away, Zukao Kyo glanced at Kyo Deming beside him, and said in a strange way, "Oh, congratulations, brother Kyo, you accepted a box of cigarettes and a younger brother. You are at the pinnacle of your life. Why are you so weird when you are not at your peak?" Kyo Deming glanced sideways at the guy next to him, took out his cigarette, lit one, and took a puff. "Let's go, call Liu Yang and the others to eat together." Zukao Kyo said, "I know how to eat and drink every day, Kyo." Deming scratched his head. He didn't know what Zukao Kyo was angry with. He thought for a moment, but it was impossible for a man in his 40s to argue with a girl in her 20s. He walked forward. He changed the topic and said, "But that guy seems to have taken a liking to that girl Baolan. Haha, that's true. However, that girl Baolan is really good looking, even without makeup, and she's still a college student, so it's best at her age. If I were more than 20 years younger, I would definitely pursue her." Kyo said, "Then I don't look good. Is 25 not a good age, Kyo?" Deming was choked so much that he couldn't figure out why Zukao Kyo was unhappy. He thought for a while and said, "Young and young, you are young, and you are good looking. Let's go eat quickly, or it's almost dinner time. By the way, Zanhua, do you want one? I don't smoke." Zukao Kyo turned her head slightly, but followed closely behind Kyo Deming. Kyo Deming walked in front, and after a moment, he said, "Having said that, there is no need for a girl of your age to follow an uncle like me all day long. Now that Anyang Mountain is safe, you should have more contact with others." Kyo followed Kyo Deming step by step. Perhaps because the ice and snow on the ground were gradually melting, and the road was not easy to walk, she seemed not to hear what Kyo Deming was saying, and had no way to respond. This book will be on the shelves on November 1st, and I hope everyone can come and support it, and support the original version. Genuine subscription. Chapter 174 Alien Clues. Chapter 176 Alien Clues. Li Jianbei was so heroic, which was beyond Xia Bai's expectation. He was actually a little curious as to what the thing Li Jianbei was talking about was, but 2 hours, a nuclear bomb. There is a certain risk for Xia Bai. The distance between Shengjing and Bincheng is not that far from Xia Bai's current position. At the speed of the battleship, even if it is not moving at full speed, it will take less than 30 minutes to turn back. But that's a nuclear bomb. Xia Bai was silent for a moment and said, "How important is that thing you mentioned, Li?" Jianbei shook his head and said, "I heard Director Zhang from the Scientific Research Center say that it may be related to the cause of this apocalyptic outbreak, Li." Jianbei did not tell the truth. In fact, at this time, the military already had the idea of alien creatures. In fact, this was even proposed by the Scientific Research Center. The group of scientists believed that this virus was a semi-biochemical weapon that was targeted and had a specific effect. It is impossible for any known country or force on the earth to do this. From the analysis of the virus, they determined that it came from space and was not a natural virus carried by meteorites in the previous life. Xia Bai also had various speculations about this terrible virus, but at that time, the level he could contact was too low, and it was impossible to know too much. It was not until the last moment that alien creatures completely appeared. Only then did he truly realize the existence of alien creatures and their connection with this biochemical virus, but it is obviously impossible for the military to be so behind the scenes. However, the situation in Changbei Mountain is obviously more complicated than this. Even if the Scientific Research Center has confirmed that this thing is related to the source of the apocalypse or even to alien creatures, it is still unwilling to help the Scientific Research Center obtain this so-called key thing. But Li Jianbei would not say these things. However, just the information Li Jianbei has revealed now is enough for Xia Bai to figure out the general situation. Although he didn't know the specific situation inside Changbei Mountain, he was aware of the chaotic competition among factions in Changbei Mountain. The survivor base of Changbei Mountain in the previous life was even destroyed because of this. Li Jianbei didn't need to explain. He could understand the reason point, and maybe related to the cause of the apocalyptic outbreak. Isn't that related to alien creatures? Li Jianbei might be able to hide this from others, but he couldn't hide this kind of thing from Xia Bai. Things related to alien creatures are undoubtedly what Xia Bai is most concerned about right now. In fact, he had already made his own speculation about this. Although alien creatures only came to the Earth in the 5th year of the apocalyptic outbreak, it is impossible for them to make such a big noise on the Earth without leaving any traces. In the previous life, Xia Bai died when the alien creature spaceship just arrived. To this day, he still doesn't know what the alien creature is like, where it comes from, why it comes, and why it releases biochemical viruses on the Earth. Did they come to the Earth during the first 5 years of the end of the world, and were they just quietly watching the beginning of the end of the world on the Earth and the struggle of mankind in the corner, or were they biochemical weapons launched in the depths of space first? And were they themselves in the 5 years of the end of the world? The Earth that came later. In the past, Xia Bai was more inclined to the former of these two speculations, feeling that alien creatures had been watching the changes and struggles of humans in the dark, and only planned to take action in the end. But now, he is more inclined to the latter one. I thought, if alien creatures really exist, they must have the ability to monitor the overall situation. Xia Bai's battleship has reached the 4th level, and is extremely conspicuous. If they are on the Earth, can they just let Xia Bai run rampant everywhere? Or, in the eyes of alien creatures, Xia Bai's current power is simply not enough, so there is no need to intervene. Xia Bai didn't know, but he knew that this was something he couldn't escape. If the thing in Bincheng was really related to alien creatures, it would be better to go and take a look first instead of waiting for people to come and kill them. There is no escaping this. If the other party is on this planet now, silently observing everything, when Xia Bai's battleship becomes more powerful, the other party may not sit idly by and do nothing. If it were Xia Bai himself, he would not be able to sit back and watch clearly. As the enemy becomes stronger, if it is an alien creature, it will also push him to death. Therefore, there is no reason why running up to him now is seeking death. And if alien creatures haven't come to the Earth yet, he needs to see what they are. Xia Bai's mind was racing, and after figuring out the general situation of the cause and effect, he made a decision almost immediately. The risk of this operation may be higher, but it is definitely worth it, and Li Jianbei also promised heavy money. Xia Bai was silent. But Li Jianbei couldn't sit still. For him, the launch of nuclear weapons had entered a countdown, and every minute of waiting meant an increase in risk. So when he saw that Xia Bai was reluctant to speak, he said directly, although we are cooperating, from your perspective, you are still just a civilian and a survivor. This matter should not fall on you, but we have the ability to level the entire city, and you, the battleships and your shield technology, can truly bring out our people and what we want safely. Before Li Jianbei finished his words of persuasion, Xia Bai suddenly said, "Okay, I'll go." Li Jianbei did not expect that Xia Bai, who had been hesitant just now, would agree immediately. He was stunned for a moment, and did not react immediately. As for Xia Bai, once he decided to do something, he would never delay. He immediately stood up, and without waiting for Li Jianbei to speak, he said directly, "Send the precise information, the specific launch time and location of the nuclear bomb. Send the location directly." Having said this, he turned to Chen Yingying over there and said, "Yingying, you go back and pass the message to the battleship. I will prepare for the battle immediately and go to Bincheng." Li Jianbei looked at the man in front of him and was silent for about a second, then slowly nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank him too early. I'm not in the military system, and I can't guarantee that I will complete the mission." After saying that, Xia Bai turned around and walked out. Although he said that, since Xia Bai was about to take action, he didn't want to return without success. There are less than 2 hours left in total, so Xia Bai needs to hurry. While walking towards the location of the battleship, he directly opened his internal channel and said directly to Beilan, Chen Shai and Cheng and other members he trusted most, "Everyone, come to the air raid shelter to gather. I need your help." The battleship sets sail. We are going to the Buncheng battlefield, brothers. This book will be officially released at 12 PM on September 30th, that is, at 0 PM on the 1st. Please subscribe for the original version. This book will be on the shelves soon. Please support and subscribe to it. Chapter 175 Remarks on the launch. Remarks on the launch. The Apocalyptic Black Technology Battleship System is about to be launched. To be honest, I don't really know what I should say about my acceptance speech. This book was uploaded at the end of June, and I have been writing it for a long time, since October. The results are not good, but not too bad either. I really don't know how far I can go if I subscribe. During this period, there were also trolls, and there were also brothers who liked this book. I'm here to first say thank you to all the brothers who have supported this book, voted, collected, rewarded, and commented. Without you, I'm afraid this book would not exist. Book today. Of course, here, I would like to express my special thanks to my editor, Lan Guang, for giving me so many recommendations and opportunities. I don't know how to talk, and I don't know how to find people to talk to. I don't know if Lan Gui will do it. You came here to read my acceptance speech, which is so disappointing, but I'm really grateful. Lan University really gave me a lot of opportunities. Without Lu University, this book might have been popular among all living beings, and Herbal Tea would not have such lovely people. Big book lover. I'm not a master, and I can't guarantee that there are no bugs in my books, nor can I say that everyone can like the stories I write. But all I can do is try my best and take everyone's opinions into account. I will absorb and digest it. I will definitely correct the mistakes and omissions that you point out as soon as possible. At the same time, I will also use my best efforts to write this story well and live up to everyone's expectations. I hope everyone can enjoy it. Happy to see. Then, it will be released tomorrow, and if nothing else, it will be a guaranteed burst of 10 updates. In addition, I also owe 2 chapters of additional updates from 2 book friends, Xian Bu Traffic Jam and Chunwa 2002. Together, there will be 12 updates together tomorrow. My brothers have always said that I don't break out. Actually, it's because of the new book period. A rubbish newcomer like me has to keep the word count down for new books. I'd like to apologize to everyone here and hope it's not too late. However, I have always maintained a stable 2 updates unless I'm particularly busy here, which is actually a good conscience. My idea has always been very simple. Things like writing books on the internet are actually mutual. When the author writes steadily and maintains his own instinct, readers will be willing to follow, and readers who are capable, even if you support the genuine version, there won't be so many eunuchs. I can't guarantee anything else. As long as my brothers are supporting me, I will never fall behind. Then, after it is put on the shelves, if the average order reaches 1000, 10 updates will be made. If the average order reaches 2000, 10 updates will be made. If the average order reaches 3000, to be honest, I think even 1000 is enough. So I won't be embarrassed by talking nonsense here. Now I'm really panicking. If I have a collection of 17,000, how many can I get for each order? 100, 200, then my heart might be completely cold. After it's on the shelves, subscriptions are really important. It determines how far and how long a book can go. The subscription price of Kidian is really not expensive. 1000 words only costs 5 cents, and VIP only costs 3 cents or even 2 cents. Nowadays, when people walk on the roadside and see a dime, they won't pick it up, but reading 2000 words only costs 10 cents. Money, and 2000 words. For someone like me, it takes me 2 full hours to sit in front of the computer and type. Brothers, if you are still here, please support the genuine version. Being put on the shelves is like a battleship setting sail for a magnificent interstellar war. Only with the support of brothers can the battleship's guns be charged and shine, the battleship be invincible on the battlefield of the stars, and win the battle. Brothers, I have been accompanying this book and accompanying Liangxia for the past 4 months. Tomorrow is the crucial battle. Liangxia hopes to see you supporting me, supporting Xia Bai, and supporting the battleship all the way until Xia Bai's death. Battleships truly traverse the starry sky and face invincible enemies of the world. This story is still long, and there is a grander chapter to come. Herbal tea and Xia Bai are willing to be with you. The induction is on, the front is clear, and now is the moment to jump to the vertical and horizontal. Brothers, this book will be officially released at 12 PM on September 30th, that is, at 0 PM on the 1st. Please subscribe for the original version. This book will be officially put on the shelves at 12 PM on September 30th, that is, at midnight on the 1st. Please subscribe for the original version. This book will be officially put on the shelves at 12 PM on September 30th, that is, at midnight on the 1st. Please subscribe for the original version. Please subscribe. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.